What's up guys, this is your favorite fanfic YouTuber, the Fanfic Majesty. Join my Discord if you want to chat and share your thoughts, the link is in the description. 5SL Chapter 87 Build the Gate of Diversity. Countdown to the start of the third stage. 3 months open black lens bracket subscription close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket name. Lee Yi close black lens bracket, shading process. Level 1, loaded, second stage, loaded, third stage, not opened. Open black lens bracket ability. Immortality, ghost fog, shadowing close black lens bracket, summoning authority, ghost shadow group, troll group, night bat group. Countdown to start the third stage, 3 months. In the Empire State Building, in Li Yi's office, at this moment, Li Zheng was staring at his system panel in a daze. After the shadowization process is loaded into the second stage, the opening time of the third stage directly becomes 1 year. But since he occupied Niuyue City, the loading time of the third stage dropped sharply to 3 months. Combining Victor's previous words, Li Yi finally figured out the principle of the time change of system loading. There was no Kingdom of Shadows in this world, but the Kingdom of Shadows appeared because of the template loaded by myself. To this world, the Kingdom of Shadows is equivalent to having an extra parasite on a person, constantly absorbing the nutrients of this world to grow. As the Lord of Shadows, Li Yi is the port connecting the two worlds. Up to now, Li Yi has summoned 3 major core, and the Shadow Kingdom has initially taken shape, starting from the previous passive aggression to the current active aggression. Therefore, as he occupies more territories and cities in this world, the countdown to loading in the third stage will naturally decrease. As for why the countdown can also be reduced by his own death, Li Yi didn't understand before, but now he has some understanding in his heart. Every time he died before, his body would disappear after death. He always thought it was recovered by the Shadow Kingdom. But now it seems that it is not the Shadow Kingdom that recovered his body, but this world. Just like fishing, this world is the fish, and he is the bait. It is precisely because this world swallows the bait that the Shadow Core quickly took root in this world. But Sombra is successful. Sombra is also defeated. Maybe Sombra has invaded this world too violently, which made the world originally have a sense of crisis, and even planned to start saving itself. I just don't know how the world can save itself. Li Yi frowned and thought for a long time, but still couldn't think of a reason in his mind. While Li Yi was thinking about how the world would save itself, Tony and Banner had started research on how to open the multi-universe in the underground laboratory in Los Angeles. Before the research started, Tony was at a loss as to how to open the multi-universe, and he had the attitude of treating a dead horse as a living horse doctor. But after the research started, Tony instantly felt enlightened. It was as if he had pushed open the door of God. A lot of information and inspiration about the multi-universe constantly came out of his head, filling the puzzle that opened the door of the multi-universe. An hour, 2 hours. Banner, who was originally called in to help, looked at Tony who was scribbling, and was completely speechless in shock. At first he thought about how to help Tony, but when Tony started researching, he found that he seemed to be unable to help. Because he can only understand a small part of what Tony wrote, and he can't understand most of the rest. In this way, like a bystander, he watched for several hours, until the time came to 12 o'clock in the evening. Tony, who was immersed in drawing various drawings, finally stopped. Seeing this, Banner just wanted to go up to him and ask him what those blueprints meant, but in the end, Tony rolled his eyes, fell to the ground, and sniffed. Advertisement, Tony. Banner was taken aback and hurried forward to support Tony. After some inspection, he found that Tony was only gone because of excessive consumption, and he was instantly relieved. Immediately, he quickly put Tony in the lounge of the laboratory, gave him a bottle of glucose, and then he returned to the test bench again, picked up the remaining drawings and looked at them. There are many blueprints drawn by Tony, but Banner can't understand the specific principles, because these things are beyond his recognition. However, he could see that these blueprints were all about building a device to open the multi-universe gate. In this way, Banner watched for a whole night, until the next day. Steve walked into the laboratory, looked at Banner standing in front of the laboratory table. His face could not help showing a trace of doubt. "Where's Tony?" "Okay." Banner was awakened, turned to look at Steve, and Steve couldn't help being startled when he saw the pair of panda eyes on Banner's face. "Banner, did you study all night?" Steve pointed to the blueprints on the table, and then to him. Seeing this, Banner didn't know that he had misunderstood, and quickly explained, "No, I didn't make these blueprints, they were made by Tony. It's just that I didn't understand it very well, that's why I watched it for so long. As for Tony, he lost his strength yesterday and passed out. He should wake up now. I'll call him and let him explain." After Banner finished speaking, he hurriedly went to the lounge to wake Tony up, but he didn't wait for him to take 2 steps. Suddenly there was a sound of footsteps coming from the direction of the lounge, and then the energetic Tony walked out with a relaxed expression on his face. "Hi, good morning." Seeing Tony, whose mental outlook was completely different from before, both Steve and Banner couldn't help showing a hint of surprise on their faces. Before, Tony has always been in a lifeless state, and he has rarely been as energetic as he is now. "Morning, Tony, you look great today." "Yeah, I think so too." After chatting for a few words, Steve quickly changed the subject to the main topic. "Tony, I thought about it all night yesterday. The multi-universe is still too illusory. I think we can change our thinking and seek help from other countries. We all know Li Yi's character. If we really want him to occupy the top spot, it's not good for us, and it's not good for them either. If we can unite the forces of all countries, maybe there's a way to deal with Li Yi. What do you think?" Steve said with a hint of expectation in his eyes. This is the way he thought about all night yesterday. Unite with the rest of the world. The reason why they couldn't think of it before was because they were all blinded by the name of the most beautiful and powerful country. I feel that they can't solve the things, what other Gwoking can do. But when Steve let go of his beautiful pride and looked at himself, he suddenly came to his senses. There may be a gap in the strength of each country, but it does not mean that they cannot solve Li Yi. Advertisement after all, the culture and background are different, maybe someone really can deal with Li Yi. Even if it can't, as long as the vast majority of countries unite, with such a huge body here, even if they can't kill Li Yi, they can stop his expansion and buy them time. I have to say, this is really a good idea. Even Tony couldn't help but glance at Steve in surprise. This guy doesn't seem to be a reckless man who can only shake his fist. The plan is good, but I will keep it for the time being. Now, I have a brand new plan. What? Create multiple doors. There seemed to be a series of question marks in Steve's head, and he wondered if Tony was crazy. You just started researching yesterday, but today you are going to build a multi-dimensional gate? Tony, are you okay? Steve said worriedly, looking at his expression. The corners of Tony's mouth turned up slightly. I know you don't believe it, but it turns out that I'm the world's greatest genius. I have already researched the theory of how to open the gate of multiverse. Now as long as we create the gate of multiverse, we can open the gate of multi-universe, which is another world. How is this possible? Steve couldn't help exclaiming. After the words fell, Banner on the side couldn't help raising his hand. Well, I read what Tony wrote all night. Although I haven't fully understood it, I have proved that his theory is very feasible. Listening to Banner's words 690, and looking at the confident expression on Tony's face, no matter how hard it is for Steve to accept it, at this moment, he has to accept one thing. Tony actually spent a day researching the opening method of the multi-dimensional door. Phew, this world is really crazy. Is this the world of geniuses? It's unimaginable. Okay, since you all think it is feasible, then try it. I will contact the people in S.H.I.E.L.D. now and ask them to send the required materials. Steve said solemnly, then picked up the material list that Tony had written temporarily, turned and left the laboratory. To build the multi-dimensional gate, the materials needed are almost all the top materials on Blue Star. Even if the Capital Consortium wants to collect all these materials, it will take a lot of effort. But because S.H.I.E.L.D. has very high authority, the materials were sent to the laboratory that afternoon. Tony and Banner also started building multiple doors. And when they were building the multi-dimensional door, in the living room of the villa, Steve's good mood was completely destroyed by a piece of information sent by S.H.I.E.L.D. This morning, at 7:15, the Black Shadow Corps of the Shadow Kingdom appeared in Luoshanji. The military sent troops to resist, but the whole army was wiped out. At present, the Black Shadow Corps has entered Luoshanji and began to occupy Luoshanji. Although the military is still actively resisting, it is expected that after 3 days, the military will be completely defeated, and Luoshanji will also be in the hands of the Shadow Kingdom. This is the secret information sent by S.H.I.E.L.D. They called the Shadow Corps the Black-Clothed Demons before. But with the establishment of the Shadow Kingdom, the reputation of the Shadow Corps has spread, and Melegian finally knows the name of the Shadow Corps under Li Yi. After reading the information thoroughly, Steve squeezed the information in his hand into a ball of paper in an instant. A trace of anger and hesitation emerged from his eyes. However, the hesitation in his eyes didn't last long and soon turned into firmness. Glancing back in the direction of the basement research room, Steve finally left the villa without thinking. Chapter 88 Little Spider-Man vs. Captain America. The experience of life gradually turning into nothingness. Open black lens bracket. Subscribe close black lens bracket. Luoshanji. At this moment more than half of the city has turned into a battlefield. The military has built a defense line in the city to hinder the advance of the Shadow Corps. Raid. Even, the number of patrol squads is greater than the number of people on the frontline battlefield. No way, before, because they fought against the ghosts for the first time, they were directly rushed into their camp by the ghosts and made a surprise attack. As a result, they couldn't organize an effective resistance force at all, and the defense line collapsed. The same is true in the back. Ghosts constantly infiltrate, assassinate, surprise attack, and the army is defeated. It was only in one day that half the city was lost. Later, the military finally learned how to behave. Not only did they set up 2 lines of defense at the front and back to resist the Shadow Corps, but they also assembled a large number of patrol teams in the line of defense to patrol and guard all shadow corners. Once there is movement in the corner of the shadow, shoot without saying a word. Although this method is troublesome, it effectively curbs the unreasonable raid and infiltration of the Shadow Corps. Definitely, the Shadow Corps can also directly cross their line of defense and ignore these people. But this obviously doesn't work. What Li Yi wants is the whole city, so the resistance forces in the city must be wiped out. Even if the Shadow Corps wants to go around, they can't spare them. They have no choice but to fight head-on with the military. In the occupied area, on the top of a certain high-rise building, Spider-Man looked down at the ghosts constantly rushing down below and the military who were shooting wildly. In order to keep Luoshanji, the military personnel went completely crazy. All kinds of bombs, rockets, and missiles frantically bombarded the crowd of the Shadow Corps. As a result, the entire Luoshan mountain was full of artillery fire, roaring all night. But even if weapons of mass destruction are deployed, it is still difficult to change the situation on the battlefield. Most of the Shadow Corps will be emptied in an instant, allowing the military personnel to have a short respite. But within 3 minutes, there will be a large number of ghosts emerging from the ground, and the Ring King will come back. In this way, the soldiers on the front line changed batch after batch, and the ghosts died one after another. For a while, the two sides fell into a stalemate. In a short period of time, no one can do anything to the other. No way, in this kind of large-scale Legion battle, although the speed of Ghost Shadow has increased compared to before, under the cover of a large number of indiscriminate artillery fire, it can't easily kill through the defense line of the Sandshaker army. In the previous battle against the 100,000 troops outside Niue City, those troops hadn't arrived in time, and were caught off guard by the Shadow Corps. Otherwise, even if the Black Shadow Corps could win in the end, it would not be so fast. Faced with this situation, the best way is naturally to rely on the immortality of the ghosts to grind slowly. After all, people will relax, but the Shadow Corps will not. But Spider-Man made a bet with Jin, and he didn't want to lose to that guy. Therefore, seeing that the situation was at a stalemate, without saying a word, he jumped directly from the tall building, waved his hands in midair, and immediately, strips of cobweb sprayed out from his wrist, sticking to the tall building, and his figure was heading towards the military frontline command post. In Legion combat, what is the most important thing? Guns? Strength? Nothing is right, it is command. If you compare the Legion to a person, then a person with a brain is a normal person. People without brains, even if they are normal in other aspects, they still have no doubts with Deadman in the end. And the headquarters is the brain of an army. As long as the headquarters is killed, the Shadow Corps will win this battle again. But at this moment, the frontline headquarters was as bright as day, and the headlights illuminated the headquarters like daylight. Advertisement: more than 500 soldiers guarded the entire headquarters. After fighting with the Shadow Corps, the military people are not fools, and gradually discovered some weaknesses of the Shadow Corps. For example, they can only appear in the shadows, and cannot directly appear in the light. Although the light cannot cause damage to the Shadow Corps, it can effectively prevent the Shadow Corps from raiding and prevent them from disappearing. As for why this method is not popularized on the entire front line, there are 3 reasons. First, time is too late, they don't have that much time to set up lighting. Second, the Shadow Corps is not a fool. If you can build it, they can destroy it. As we all know, destruction is always easier than construction. Third, it is impossible to disperse all the darkness with artificial lighting. It is fine in a small area, but in a large area, it is almost impossible to completely disperse the darkness. Even the sun has corners that cannot be illuminated. How can it be possible to dispel shadows and darkness by relying on artificial lighting? Therefore, although the people in the military discovered this method of restricting ghost images, they could only use it on a small scale and could not use it on a large scale. Just as the soldiers of the command post were closely inspecting all the places outside the command post, in midair, the figure of Spider-Man suddenly passed over their heads and directly entered the command post. When the body landed, Spider-Man's ears moved, and he quickly locked on to a certain building. Afterwards, without delay, he quickly rushed towards the building where the military commander was located. His figure was like a ghost, and ordinary soldiers couldn't see his figure clearly at all, which made him completely ignore the strict defense of the command post, smoothly entered the command building, and saw everyone who was busy in the command post. And just when he found the people in the headquarters, because of his stopped figure, the people in the headquarters saw him. Looking at the Black Spider-Man, a scream resounded through the headquarters in an instant. Enemy attack, W. Hearing a loud shout from an officer, the corners of Spider-Man's mouth under the mask rose slightly, and then moved instantly. His figure disappeared in place, and when he reappeared, he had already appeared in front of the screaming officer. He hugged his head with both hands and twisted it hard, only a click sound, and the officer's head was instantly twisted off. It's noisy. After finishing all this, Spider-Man said something lightly, then looked around everyone, and greeted with a smile. The Kingdom of Shadows, hello to everyone, good evening. After the words fell, Spider-Man rushed into the crowd in an instant, setting off a killing spree. At this moment, many officers in the headquarters couldn't sit still. While drawing their pistols, they shouted loudly, "Guards!" The words fell, and soon, a burst of hurried footsteps came from outside the door, and a large number of guards rushed into the headquarters. Looking at the Spider-Man who kept killing people, he shot without saying a word. If he used his full speed, then these guards would not even be able to see their shadows. But if he wants to kill, no matter how fast he is, there must be a process, which slows down his speed and gives the guards time to lock his position. However, the problem is not big. Even if the position is locked, when they shoot, the Spider-Man has already left the original position, and they still can't hit. Even, from the beginning to the end, Spider-Man didn't even look back at them, just kept slaughtering those officers. For a time, many officers in the command headquarters showed despair. If the Spider-Man cannot be locked, the guards will not be able to intercept it, and if they cannot intercept it, they can only wait to die. In this case, how can they not despair? Advertisement. But just when everyone couldn't help but began to despair, suddenly, a burst of tearing air sounds came from the gate, and the next second, a shield turned into an afterimage and went straight to Spider-Man. When Spider-Man reacted, the shield was already close at hand, making it difficult for him to dodge. Helpless, he could only support with both hands, trying to block the shield. As a result, when the shield hit the palms of his hands, a huge force came, and he was thrown flying out of nowhere in an instant. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Fuck, who is it? Get out of here. The figure was thrown into the air, and Spider-Man flipped back, stabilized the figure, and turned his gaze to the door. The eyes under the mask were full of anger. Are you, Spider-Man? An uncertain voice came from the mouth of the command department, and the next second, Steve slowly walked into the building of the command department. Looking at the Spider-Man squatting on the table not far away, he said in a surprised tone. Although Spider-Man was gone when Steve woke up from S.H.I.E.L.D., the news left by him was still there. To readjust to the world, Steve didn't stop reading his newspaper. Although Steve has never met Spider-Man, he has a good impression of Spider-Man. Once, there was a time when he sighed because of his death. But he never imagined that the person who was declared dead not only came back to life, but also became what he is now, killing innocent people indiscriminately. It made him afraid to confirm his identity for a while. Similarly, when Steve recognized Spider-Man, Spider-Man also recognized Steve. As a spiritual symbol of beauty, he can be said to have grown up listening to Steve's stories. For Steve, he was very admired when he was a child, and he later became a superhero. In addition to the influence of his uncle, Steve's story is also a key factor. Captain Beautiful Pointer? Unexpectedly, you are still alive. Spider-Man said in amazement. Hearing this, Steve clenched his fists angrily and asked, why did you do something for that guy? Since you know me, don't you know that the me I used to be is dead? You mean, that guy brought you back to life again? Steve said in a shocked tone. He understood the subtext in Spider-Man's voice. Yeah, so, why can't I do it? Don't you know how evil that guy is? Have you forgotten how much you have suffered to protect Neo? Steve kept questioning. He was not only angry at Spider-Man's betrayal of justice, but even more angry that he took refuge in Li Yi so easily. Facing his questioning, the Spider-Man in the distance couldn't help but sneer. Do you know what it feels like to sink and dissipate a little bit in the dark? Have you ever experienced the kind of experience code where life gradually turns into nothingness? You haven't experienced it, so what right do you have to point fingers in front of me? Chapter 89. That guy shouldn't exist in this world at all. Open black lens bracket. Subscribe close black lens bracket. Luoshanji, the frontline headquarters. Steve and Spider-Man looked at each other in silence. A dignified atmosphere pervaded the building. The other people around looked at the two with nervousness written on their faces. No matter what, in short, I will absolutely not allow you to continue killing people. Steve gritted his teeth. Hearing this, Spider-Man spread out his hands. Then you've been told so much nonsense. Come on, let me see how strong the former spiritual symbol of Malegian really is. After speaking, Spider-Man ticked his fingers at Steve. In an instant, a burst of tearing air sounds sounded instantly, and Steve thought of Spider-Man without warning and rushed forward. At this moment, he is like a cheetah, swift and brave, and his speed is extremely fast. However, Spider-Man's reaction power is already strong, and after resurrection, all aspects of ability have been strengthened. Although Steve's speed is fast, in Spider-Man's eyes, it seems to be slowed down several times. I saw him jump, and the whole person passed directly over Steve's head, easily dodging his attack. It's too slow, Captain. It seems that you were already so useless when you were old. Spider-Man taunted Steve wantonly. Steve didn't speak, just continued to attack. Punches, feet, flying shields, he exploded with all his strength and constantly attacked Spider-Man. It looked mighty, but every time, his attacks failed. Spider-Man kept dodging. The whole process was very easy, and there was still time to taunt. Under the verbal attack of Spider-Man, Steve's face suddenly showed anger. F***K. You reptile, do you dare to confront me head-on like a man? A head-to-head confrontation? No problem, since you ask so, I will satisfy you. Spider-Man said with a hint of joking in his tone, and after the words fell, Spider-Man took the initiative to launch an attack. I saw that 510 came to Steve in an instant with a bounce. His speed was as fast as lightning, and then he punched out. Seeing this, Steve was taken aback, and before he had time to react too much, he put the shield in front of him immediately. Boom! There was a loud noise, and in the next second, Steve's figure was directly thrown flying by Spider-Man's punch. Crash! Steve's body slammed into the table, smashing the table directly. The terrifying impact made his arms go numb. F***K. How come? Jumping up from the ground, Steve knelt down on one knee and looked at Spider-Man not far away, with disbelief written all over his face. He couldn't figure out how Spider-Man's emaciated body could contain such terrifying power, so that he was blown away with a single punch. If there is no shield to block the unloading force, wouldn't I be seriously injured by his punch? Thinking of the picture of himself being killed by a single punch, Steve couldn't help but shuddered all over. Just when he was puzzled, not far away, Spider-Man had withdrawn his fist, tilted his head and looked at him with a smile. The shield is good, but the strength is so-so. Captain, you don't only have this ability. If you only have this ability, then you may have to stay here today. While taunting, the Spider-Man's figure jumped towards Steve again in an instant. Watching this scene, Steve didn't even think about it. He directly smashed the shield in his hand to the Spider-Man in midair, trying to catch him off guard. But he didn't expect that a cobweb sprayed out from Spider-Man's wrist in an instant. The cobweb stuck to the shield, passed over Spider-Man's head, and then Spider-Man pulled hard. Advertisement. Then cobweb slammed into Steve with shield at the speed. Boom! With a loud bang, the unsuspecting Steve was hit by his own shield on the spot, and he flew upside down again. Seeing this, Spider-Man didn't stop for a moment, and continued to cull and go up, crazily thinking of saying hello to Steve. The lightning-fast speed and the strength of a giant elephant made his fists indestructible. Steve tried his best to dodge and block, but in the end he couldn't change the direction of the battle, and was pushed to the ground by Spider-Man and rubbed wildly. And when Steve was beaten violently, on the other side, in the underground laboratory, Tony and Banner finally completed the assembly of the multidimensional door. As the machine started, the multidimensional door quickly made a loud bang, and then a portal-emitting blue light appeared in front of Twodian and Banner. Is this the entrance to another multi-universe? Banner was amazed and his eyes were filled with disbelief. Up to now, he still finds it hard to accept that it took Tony only one day and one night to create the multi-dimensional gate that connects to other universes. Can we go to another multi-universe now? Banner looked at Tony with eagerness in his tone. Hearing this, Tony turned his head to look at Banner. No, there are still some small problems that have not been resolved in the multi-dimensional gate, so for the time being, only one person can pass through. What is the problem? Energy. The door to crossing the multi-universe has been opened, but the energy required to cross the universe is too vast. Even if all the resources of Blue Star are exhausted, it may not be enough to last 10 times. Right now, I'm temporarily using the arc reactor to support the gate of multiplicity, but the energy reserve of the arc reactor is only enough to support one person traveling back and forth, so one of us must stay here. Okay, since that's the case, my tumor is here. Banner nodded regretfully. As a scientist, he also wondered what another universe would look like, but since the energy doesn't allow it, let's talk about it later. No, I stay here, you go to other multi-universes. Tony shook his head, then pointed to the wires attached to his chest. The arc reactor is on him, and he can't go there now, so he can only let Banner go through the multi-dimensional gate. Yeah, but I don't know what to do in the past. Banner instantly became bewildered. He is just an ordinary scientist, although he really wants to go to other, CBCG, universes to see, but let him go there alone, he is a little apprehensive. More importantly, he knew that in the past this time, he was going to rescue soldiers, which meant that the burden of saving the world was all on him. If there was a slight mistake, the world would really be hopeless. Thinking of this, a terrifying pressure fell on him, making him stutter even when he spoke. Seeing his appearance, Tony took a deep breath and encouraged him. Believe in yourself and you can do it. If everything is as I expected, then the world on the other side should be similar to our world. After you pass, the most important thing is not to find rescuers, but to go to S.H.I.E.L.D. and find Tesseract. Only by finding that thing can we have enough energy to maintain the consumption of the Gate of Diversity, understand? I get it, but I have a question. Banner nodded flusteredly, and then asked a question. You say. Advertisement. Tony watched him, waiting for him to speak. That is, if you just said that that world is similar to ours, how can you be sure that that world is not occupied by Li Yi? Maybe the opposite world. Like us, waiting for help from other worlds? After saying this, Banner breathed a sigh of relief. In fact, this question arose when Tony proposed the multi-universe theory, but he never dared to ask. But now, for him to perform this task, he must ask this question clearly. And after hearing this question, Tony couldn't help being stunned for a moment, and then, a complex look appeared on his face. Although I'm not sure if there is that guy Li Yi in that world, but I think there is at least half the probability that that guy Li Yi doesn't exist in that universe. Why? Banner was a little puzzled. I investigated that guy, not that kind of simple investigation, I sent someone to the flower grower to investigate it specially. Although there are tens of millions of Li Yi in the flower planter, none of them can match up with that guy. Do you know what that means? He changed his name? Banner said a little cutely. Hearing this, Tony couldn't help but glared at him fiercely. This means that there shouldn't be that guy in this world at all. In other words, that guy is probably not from our world. I'm not sure if my guess is correct, but if that guy is really not from our world, then in the parallel universe of our world, he will never exist. Do you understand it? I really want to understand, but I feel a little bit confused. Banner looked confused, asked him to do research he was good at, but asked him to go around interpersonal relationships, his mind was only a mess. This made Tony look desperate, wondering if this guy burned his brain out when he became Hulk. I didn't bother to explain at the moment, and urged me directly. You don't need to worry about so much, you just need to know that there is a high probability that that guy will not exist in the opposite world. Now, get out of here immediately. Remember, you must get the Tesseract. Even if you snatch it, you have to snatch it. Otherwise, we may not be able to open the door of diversity for the second time. Tony said with a serious face, and after hearing the case, the expression on his face also became serious. I see, I'm going. Go. Tony waved his hand, then handed him the key to open the door of multivariate from the opposite world, and finally urged. The key can only be used once, don't lose it, it is good. After saying that, Banner walked towards the multi-dimensional door in a white coat without looking back, and finally his figure slowly stepped into the weight of the blue light door. And just after he entered it, a painful howl suddenly came from Tony's mouth, and the energy in his chest was quickly evacuated, making his face instantly pale, like a vampire who hasn't seen the sun for hundreds of years. Banner, you must succeed. Tony endured the piercing pain, looked at the multi-dimensional door and muttered to himself. Chapter 90 World Number 2, Bruce, your brother is coming. Open black lens bracket. Subscribe close black lens bracket. World Number 2, Neo, a great war is breaking out. The Kirita army is constantly coming out of the space gate, while the Hulk incarnated by Bruce and the beautiful Captain are resisting the impact of the Kirita army. In the air, Iron Man blocked the advance route of Kirita's army, preventing them from spreading to the entire Neo, so as not to cause more casualties. Just when everyone was working together to resist the Kirita army, suddenly, a huge amount of blue light door appeared on the streets of Manhattan. The appearance of the light gate made the whole world tremble. Time seemed to be split at this moment, and everyone who was fighting continuously could clearly feel that the speed of time was slowing down. Immediately, the expressions on everyone's faces changed at the same time, and then they all turned their heads to look in the direction of the blue light gate. Even the Kirita army who was attacking madly at this moment seemed to have received some kind of order, and stopped one after another, down. Under the watchful eyes of various forces, a huge amount of figures slowly walked out of the blue light gate, and as the figure appeared in the sunlight, Captain Magian and the others opened their mouths in shock. Bruce, do you have a twin brother? What nonsense are you talking about? Bruce was a little dissatisfied. Hearing this, Captain Magian pointed to another green titan who came out of the blue light door, and the corner of his mouth twitched. Don't say you didn't see it. If you don't have a twin brother, then can you explain how he responded? Captain Magian asked puzzledly. This is, Tony also came to Bruce's head. Bruce, your brother is here. I repeat, I have no brothers. Bruce was a little annoyed. At this moment, he himself was in a daze. How could there be a green titan besides him? Could it be that the green titan was not an accident, or was it a race? But it's not right. Even if it's race, there's no reason for two people to look exactly the same. Thinking puzzled in his heart, he desperately wanted to find out what was going on, so he left the battlefield directly and quickly ran towards Hulk, who came out of the light gate. That's right, it's not Banner that's walking out of the multidimensional gate, it's Hulk. Traveling through the gate of diversity caused too much pressure for ordinary people to bear. In the end, Banner fell into a deep sleep, and Hulk woke up and walked out of the gate of diversity. Hulk's temper was already irritable, but after waking up, he found that the anger in his heart was even more difficult to extinguish in an inexplicable place. In particular, when he saw a guy who looked similar to himself rushing towards him, Hulk, who felt provoked, let out a violent roar instantly. Roar. The terrifying roar echoed throughout Manhattan, and in the next second, Hulk stepped on his feet, and then he slammed into Bruce directly. Seeing this scene, the pupils in Bruce's eyes shrank slightly, and then ran towards Hao without showing any weakness. He originally wanted to chat with this guy who appeared suddenly, but he didn't expect that this guy wanted to beat him up, so naturally he would not be polite. At that moment, under the gaze of everyone, two green titans as tall as hills collided fiercely in midair. Boom! There was a loud noise, and an invisible shockwave centered on the place where the two collided, rushing wildly in all directions. In an instant, the glass on the surrounding buildings burst. In the next second, under everyone's unbelievable eyes, Bruce was knocked into the air. Seeing this scene, everyone was stunned. They couldn't be more clear about how powerful Bruce is. It can be said that none of them is his opponent in terms of strength, but now, he was knocked into the air in a one-on-one collision of strength. Incredible. I feel like I'm hallucinating, Captain Magian said in a silly tone. After the words fell, Black Widow on the side couldn't help but also said, I also had hallucinations. Advertisement just when everyone around was dumbfounded. Bruce was also stunned at the moment when he was knocked into the air. He couldn't figure out why this guy who was similar to himself had such terrifying strength. It's a pity that before he could figure this out, Hulk, who was full of anger, rushed forward in an instant, his heavy body pressed down on Bruce's body fiercely, and then he gave Bruce a blast. Boom! 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 His fists kept falling, and the terrifying power made the ground tremble. For this, Bruce was very angry, and wanted to fight back, get rid of this guy on his body, but he found that his strength was completely suppressed by this guy who was exactly like himself in front of him. No matter how hard he struggled, it was difficult to break free from this guy's suppression. Coupled with the fact that Hulk's fist was constantly beating on his head, it made him even more dizzy. Fortunately, besides himself, he also has teammates. At the moment, he couldn't help himself. You guys, bang bang. Still stunned bang bang. Why bang bang? Help bang bang bang. Intermittently, Bruce almost fainted from the hammer, and only then did he finish his sentence. As his words fell, the remaining Captain Magian and the others finally came to their senses. Save people. The captain shouted loudly. After the words fell, Natasha Romanoff, Hawkeye, Iron Man and others flew towards Hulk one after another. As for Kirita's army, no one paid any attention to them at the moment. However, Kirita's army is not in a hurry to capture New York at this moment. At this moment, in space, on Kirita's battleship, the commander of Kirita is saying in a deep voice. Has it been detected? What kind of power is that light gate that can affect time and space? Report to your excellency, Commander. After the preliminary detection by the supercomputer, the light gate seems to involve the power of the universe. What's the meaning? Commander Kirita frowned. That is, that light gate is likely to be linked to other universes. What? Hearing this, Commander Kirita was shocked. The discovery of the gateway to another universe made him instantly abandon the idea of occupying this planet. Compared with a Fang universe, that planet is nothing. Go, grab that big guy who came out of the light gate, to me. Clear. With Commander Kirita's order, the Kirita army, who had been standing still, moved into action one after another, and all rushed towards Hulk. Suddenly, a strange scene appeared. The Avengers and Kirita's army, who were fighting to death before, joined forces strangely because of Hulk and attacked Hulk together. As one attack after another fell on Hulk's body, Hulk, who was concentrating on beating Bruce, suddenly became angry. As his anger rose, his strength also increased. Afterwards, he gave up on Bruce, turned and rushed towards the Avengers and the Kirita army. Advertisement. Asking for flowers. Boom, boom, boom. Relying on his terrifying strength and strong physical body, Hulk charged wildly in the Kirita army. All Kirita legions, facing Hulk, were blown to pieces with punches and kicks like children besieging adults. Watching Hulk raging wildly, Captain Beautiful Point took the opportunity to come to Bruce and called out, Bruce, are you okay? Hearing this, Bruce shook his head and sat up from the ground. It's okay, I just feel a little concussion, that damn guy almost smashed my head flat. Seeing that Bruce could still speak normally, Captain Magian couldn't help but heave a sigh of relief, and then asked with a puzzled face. Why'd I feel that you don't seem to be as good as that guy? Who said this? Bruce's eyes widened immediately, his face full of disbelief. I was just attacked by him, you know, if there is a real contest, how could he be my opponent? Faced with Bruce's stubbornness, Captain Magian didn't speak, but raised his hand silently and pointed to the battlefield beside him. Bruce turned his head to look, and suddenly saw that Hulk had smashed the Kirita army into pieces. Most of the originally dense Kirita army turned into a pile of mechanical fragments at this moment. Compared with him, Bruce was not so relaxed and freehand when facing Kirita's army before. Watching this scene, Bruce couldn't help swallowing a mouthful of saliva. Damn, where did this guy come from? How could he be so strong? Bruce said puzzledly. Unfortunately, no one could tell him the answer, and even others were curious. Captain, what shall we do now? When everyone was in a daze, Black Widow, who is a woman, obviously cared more about a problem than everyone else. Who should they help? Help the Hulk? Or help Kirita? Hearing this question, Captain Malagian was silent for a moment, then said calmly, watching the play. As soon as these words came out, everyone couldn't help being stunned. Seeing that they all looked at him with surprised eyes, the captain shrugged helplessly. I don't know what to do with this situation. That guy is obviously a ticking time bomb. Whoever comes close to beat who, Kirita army, do you want to help him? Everyone shook their heads tacitly. That's it, we can't help that green fat man, and we don't want to help Kirita, so we can only watch the show. Hey, what is Fatty Green? On the side, Bruce had a dissatisfied face. Hearing this, the captain finally realized that they also had a fat green man, and he said embarrassedly, I didn't talk about you, but about him. However, they wanted to watch a play, but someone didn't let them idle, and soon, Nick Fury's voice rang in the captain's ears. Find Loki, he's on the top floor of Stark, don't worry about the Kirita army, first capture Loki, and then take back the space gem. Okay, I understand the director. The captain responded, and then said to the crowd, he's here to live, I'll leave it to him, and we'll catch Loki. Hearing this, everyone nodded and quickly followed Captain Magian. Afterwards, the group left the battlefield directly and headed for Stark's top floor, leaving only Hulk and Kirita's army fighting. Chapter 91. Don't worry, we Kirita people keep our promises the most. Open black lens bracket. Subscribe close black lens bracket. Because Hulk's sudden appearance directly changed the situation of World War II, with the joint efforts of Captain Magian and several others, Loki was quickly taken down. Then the group looked at Hulk's explosive hammer. Kirita. Who's that guy? Your brother. Although Loki was arrested, he was not embarrassed by everyone because of Thor, but he looked a little embarrassed. At this moment, the group of them stood on the top floor of Stark, looking at Hulk who was fighting with the Kirita army below, and asked Bruce curiously. Hearing this, a black line suddenly appeared on Bruce's face. Shut up, that guy is not my brother. With a roar, Loki closed his mouth wisely. At this time, Natasha Romanoff suddenly said, look, the Kirita army has retreated. As soon as these words came out, everyone looked at the past intently. 630. Saw that the Kirita army that was constantly pouring out of the gate of space actually retreated at this moment. Seeing this scene, the faces of all the people present changed one after another, and a hint of horror appeared in the eyes of Hulk. They have personally experienced how difficult the Kirita army is. Now, facing Hulk, they actually retreated, which is really unbelievable. However, just when everyone thought the matter was over, suddenly, Commander Kirita's voice echoed throughout the battlefield. The strong man of the Earth Star, I am the commander of the Kirita Legion, Zilika, and I want to negotiate a deal with you. Zilika's voice echoed on the battlefield, and in an instant, the faces of Captain Magian and the others changed one after another, and then everyone looked at the captain in unison. Under the gaze of everyone, the captain also took a step forward and said, what do you want to talk about? After the words fell, Zilika's voice sounded immediately, it's very simple, you help me capture that green guy alive, and we give up invading the Earth. Impossible. The captain didn't even think about it, and directly refused loudly. At this moment, anyone with a discerning eye can see that Hulk has a big secret. Don't look at them fishing from the sidelines, but their attention has been focused on Hulk. If it weren't for the Kirita army, they couldn't help but want to make a move. Advertisement. Now it seems like a good deal to ask them to help capture Hulk in exchange for the safety of Earth and Star, but all smart people know that this is the stupidest choice. As the captain's voice fell, Kiluka's voice disappeared immediately, and there was no response for a long time. Just when the captain and his party thought that the Kirita people had given up, suddenly, Zilika's voice sounded again. Then change the conditions, you catch that green guy, let's stop invading and turn to cooperation, how about interrogating that guy together? Don't rush to refuse, the reason why we need your help is because our weapons are too powerful, and we are afraid of killing that guy directly. If you don't help, then we'll just kill him and continue the invasion. Zilika spoke in a neither sad nor happy tone, and there was no trace of joy or anger in his voice, but after listening to his words, the captain and his party couldn't help but fell silent, their hearts were full of entanglements, and they didn't know how to choose for a while. Agree to the transaction? Everyone was a little bit unwilling in their hearts. Don't agree to the deal? They all see the strength of Kirita's army. Once the invasion continues, it is unknown how many people will die on the planet. Definitely, they can also directly close the gate of space, which can also temporarily block the invasion of the Kirita army. However, given the interest shown by the Kirita army in Hulk, once they really close the space channel, I am afraid that the Kirita army will come to the Earth Star at a huge cost. At that time, it will not be a small fight like now, but a real full-scale invasion. All kinds of thoughts kept appearing in everyone's minds, making everyone more entangled. However, at this moment, Nick's voice suddenly rang in the captain's ear. Promise to their deal. Okay? The captain frowned slightly, then whispered. Do you really want to agree? Promise. This is the meaning of the above. Nick said in a helpless tone. After listening, the captain immediately realized that, for Earthstar, both Hulk and Kirita are very valuable to contact. Because the two sides were at war before, some things were not brought up. Advertisement, but now, with the possibility of cooperation between the two sides, there are naturally many people on Earth who want to contact them. After all, Kirita's technology can be seen above the Earth and stars at first glance, and they will not only be able to steady Hulk, but also Kirita, which will kill two birds with one stone. After thinking about this problem clearly, the captain sighed slightly and then said helplessly, Okay, we agree to the deal, and I hope you can keep your promise. Very well, you have made the right choice, don't worry, we Kirita people, keep our promises the most. After finishing speaking, Zilika's voice completely disappeared, and the captain also looked back at the people behind him. Everyone, let's act together, first suppress that crazy guy. By the way, Bruce, how did you calm down in the first place? The captain specifically asked a question, wanting to gain some experience. After all, Bruce and Hulk seem to be the same species, and the methods used to deal with Bruce back then might also work on Hulk. As soon as the words came out, everyone looked at Bruce. Under everyone's gaze, Bruce shook his head helplessly. Don't ask me, I don't remember, at that time, even my memory was fuzzy. However, as long as I consume too much, I will return to a normal person, and he should be the same. Bruce said uncertainly, and when the words fell, the captain nodded immediately, expressing his understanding, and then directly opened his mouth to arrange tasks. Our purpose is very clear, to capture this guy alive. Everyone doesn't have to rush up one by one to consume him and exhaust his 10,000. Clear. Everyone nodded, and then under the arrangement of Captain 4.9, Iron Man rushed out first. After all, in terms of consumption alone, he is the most suitable candidate. Not only can he fly, but he can also attack from a distance. Soon, below the building, Hulk, who had lost his target and gradually became manic, became entangled with Iron Man again. Loud noises continued to resound on the street. Iron Man constantly fired rockets and palm cannons, and Hulk was completely black after being blasted. It's a pity that there was no obvious injury on Hulk's body, which caused a trace of worry in everyone's eyes. I'm afraid that Iron Man will be pinched by Hulk, and then the fragments will come out. Fortunately, such a thing did not happen in the end. Although Iron Man looked very dangerous, but with his superb technology, he quickly saved himself from danger. After almost half an hour, Iron Man finally couldn't hold on due to too much consumption, so he gestured for the captain to change. Chapter 92 Tony. Is myself in another world so strong? Open black lens bracket, subscribe close black lens bracket. Soon, the captain replaced Iron Man, and then went to Bruce. As a close relative of Hulk, although Bruce was unwilling, he still had another Green Titan duel with Hulk. As a result, there is no doubt that the calm Bruce was directly defeated by the crazy Hulk. Then came Thor, Hawkeye, and Black Widow. They took turns to fight, constantly consuming Hulk's physical strength. Hulk, who had fought for a long time before, was finally exhausted under the consumption of so many people, and then the huge amounts of bodies slowly shrunken. Banner, who was dressed in rags, fell unconscious on the ground. Just after Hulk disappeared and Banner appeared, a buzzing sound sounded in the space gate, and a flight device flew out of the space gate directly, landed on the planet, and flew towards Banner quickly. Seeing this scene, the captain's expression changed instantly, and then he quickly jumped down from the top floor, combined with everyone's strength, and blocked Banner to prevent Banner from being taken away by the Kiritas. What are you doing? Are you trying to tear up the agreement? Your Excellency misunderstood. We just want to bring people back to the spaceship for research. Impossible. You have entered the spaceship. Where can we find you? You can study it, but you can only study it on Earth and stars. Otherwise, even if you kill this guy, we won't hand him over to you. The captain spoke righteously, with a righteous look on his face. Seeing this scene, Zilika frowned and thought for a while, and finally nodded. Okay, then the research is done on Earth, so let's start now? Go back to S.H.I.E.L.D. first. You can choose to stay with us, or wait for us to find out some secrets before sharing them with you. No need. Zilika sneered, and directly rejected the captain's suggestion, jokingly. If they didn't participate in the interrogation research, even if they found something in the end, they would be ghosts if they knew about it. Seeing that Zilika was not fooled, the captain shrugged indifferently. Anyway, it is impossible to hand over people to the Kirita people. If the Kirui people really turn against each other, it will be a big deal to fight again. At that time, even if the upper-level people are dissatisfied, so what? The captain thought confidently that he wanted to turn against the Kirita people directly, and he didn't want to cooperate with these invaders. It's a pity that Kiluka actually endured this kind of request, which made the captain's small calculation completely useless. Advertisement in the end, the two gangs briefly shook hands and made peace, and then returned to S.H.I.E.L.D. together. As for Manhattan, which was almost turned into ruins, no one paid any attention at the moment, and people from the government will naturally come to finish it later. Banner was very dizzy. He felt as if he was riding a roller coaster. His whole mind was always dizzy. He didn't know how he passed through the multidimensional gate, nor did he know whether he had successfully crossed the parallel universe. However, when he woke up, he was already in a glass prison. This thing was originally prepared for Bruce, and now it is used to imprison Banner, which is just right. You're awake. Just when Banner was still in a daze, a sudden sound came from outside the glass prison, which woke him up instantly, and then the memory of Hulk flooded his mind. Okay. Banner's eyes widened, and he scanned the surrounding crowd: Steve, Natasha Romanoff, Tony, and a large group of familiar faces, as well as a guy with purple skin and 2 tentacles on his head. He was the commander of Kirita, Zilliqa. This is that? Looking at his situation, Banner questioned. After the words fell, Bruce, who looked a little complicated in the crowd, said, "You are in S.H.I.E.L.D." Hearing this, Banner turned his head to look, and immediately saw Bruce. Seeing Bruce's appearance, Banner couldn't help being stunned for a moment. They can't say that they look alike, but they can only say that they are exactly the same. For a moment, Banner and Bruce couldn't help staring at each other. However, the two didn't have much time to express their emotions. Soon, a light cough sounded, and the next second, Nick's figure walked in from behind the crowd. With Nick's arrival, everyone around gave way. "Welcome to planet Earth. If you don't mind, can you introduce yourself? Where are you from? Why you came to planet Earth, and why do you look so similar to Bruce?" Nick's voice was very soothing, which made Banner feel very comfortable subconsciously, and he wanted to tell his own background immediately, but at a critical moment, a question emerged in his mind. If he tells the truth, can these people go to his world and help them deal with Li Yi? Facing this problem, Banner thought about it for himself. If it was him, he would not want to. Therefore, just as he was about to speak, he suddenly changed his mind and couldn't tell the truth. Advertisement. "Hello, my name is Bruce Banner, a time traveler." Time traveler? Everyone's eyes widened when they heard this, not only because Banner's name was the same as Bruce's, but more importantly, the identity of a time traveler sounded quite bluffing. "That's right, I'm a time traveler. To put it more clearly, I'm a traveler. It's just that my way of traveling is different from ordinary people. I usually travel to different worlds." "You mean, you've been to many worlds?" Nick was skeptical. Regarding this, Banner didn't feel guilty at all, and opened his mouth and said, "That's right, I have indeed been to many 260 worlds. It's just that I didn't expect that there was an accident during this trip. I encountered a space-time storm and came to your world by accident. If I'm not mistaken, this person should be me in this world." Banner pointed at Bruce. After listening to his words, everyone fell into silence at this moment. After all, Banner's words are really amazing. Among other things, the fact that Banner can travel in time and space is surprising enough. They didn't suspect that Banner was lying. After all, the previous scene when Banner appeared on the stage had already proved that Banner was not simple. Otherwise, they wouldn't have spent a lot of trouble. Mr. Banner, is your technology so useless?" Tony asked somewhat unacceptably. He had always considered himself a genius, but he couldn't travel through time and space, and now that someone could travel through time and space, it really shocked him. Seeing Tony's shocked appearance, Banner couldn't help but raise the corner of his mouth, naturally, and, "You don't know it yet, the time travel device was invented by you in another world." "What?" Tony was surprised, with a look of shock on his face. "Is myself in another world so fishy?" Tony was a little happy, but also a little dissatisfied. Chapter 93 Exchange Spacetime Device for Tesseract. Open black lens bracket. Subscribe close black lens bracket. It's very simple to be delighted. He is indeed the world's top genius, even if it is another world. It is also very simple to dissatisfy. Why is it not him who researched the spacetime device, but himself in another world? Just when Tony fell into a strange mood, on the other side, Nick had already asked other questions. "Mr. Banner, we welcome you as a guest, but I want to know what is your purpose for coming to planet Earth?" Nick asked, looking into Banner's eyes. As an old fox, if he can easily trust a person, then he is not an old fox. Until now, he still has doubts about Banner's identity. Moreover, even if it is true that Banner is a time traveler, as Banner said, he still does not believe that Banner travels through time and space really just to see the scenery of various worlds. The reason is very simple. No matter how you look at it, time travel is not an easy task, especially the energy consumed by each time travel may be even more unacceptable. It is impossible for people who are a little bit above to believe that so much energy is consumed for travel. Unless, well, they've solved the energy problem, time travel has even become the norm. But is it possible? Looking at Banner's appearance, I know it's impossible. Not for anything else, just because Banner is locked up by them now. If Banner's world can really travel in time and space at will, then how advanced the technology is, how could it be so easily captured by them? Moreover, there is another fatal key: the Hulk transformed by Banner is out of control. If technology is really developed to the point where time can be played with, will it still be unable to solve an out-of-control situation? It can be said that although it is difficult to determine the truth of what Banner said, Nick is sure that this guy must be lying. And being stared at by Nick's sharp eyes, Banner was also slightly flustered at the moment. He was really not good at lying and deceiving people. At this moment, despite his calm appearance on the surface, in fact, the pressure in his heart has reached the extreme. Slowly letting out a breath of foul air, Banner's thoughts turned quickly, and then he said slowly, "To tell you the truth, I do have a purpose for coming to Earth, and I'm here for the Tesseract." "Okay." On the side, Zilliqa, who had been silent all this time, frowned quietly. Advertisement is Thanos' lackey, Tesseract. He is also determined to win. As you can see, although I come from another world, the energy required to travel through time and space is too great for us to afford. Therefore, we need Tesseract to support the gate of time and space. Definitely, I don't want your Tesseract for nothing. I'm willing to use the space-time device technology in exchange for it. What do you think? Banner looked at everyone expectantly and slowly proposed a deal. Hearing this, everyone present, including Nick, frowned directly. Trade chrono device for Tesseract. In this transaction, everyone couldn't tell whether it was a loss or a profit for a while. Needless to say, the preciousness of the Tesseract, but the technology of the space-time device is obviously not bad. After all, it is a technology that involves time and space. Just based on the two words of time and space, this technology is not weaker than Tesseract, and it is even more precious. For a while, many people felt a little emotion in their hearts, but everyone's eyes were still on Nick. Tesseract belongs to S.H.I.E.L.D. obviously, only Nick is eligible to trade. And Nick ignored everyone's gaze at this moment, and after pondering for a while, he slowly said, "We need to discuss this matter, and we can't give an answer immediately, sorry." "It's okay, you can discuss it first." Banner smiled, without any eagerness to speak of. Even though he can't wait to get the Tesseract in his hands as soon as possible, he knows very well that the more anxious he is, the lower the success rate of things will be. However, before that, can you let me out first? After all, it's really boring in here. Suddenly, Banner said with a smile. Hearing this, Nick frowned slightly. Letting Banner out, to be honest, he was worried, but it didn't seem appropriate to continue to lock it up. At the moment, he couldn't help turning his gaze to Bruce, and then said to Bruce, "Bruce, next, you can have a good chat with Mr. Banner. I believe you have a lot of common topics. Others, go to the meeting with me." Bruce nodded, he really wanted to talk to Banner. Seeing that Bruce agreed, Nick looked at Banner and said, "I'll have someone let you out, forgive me." Advertisement, fine. Banner waved his hand, and then Nick gave instructions to the S.H.I.E.L.D. staff, release Banner, and asked Bruce to take Banner for a stroll, and then he brought the rest of the people to the meeting room. As a partner this time, Zilliqa also obtained the qualification to participate in the meeting. "Everyone, let's talk about your own thoughts. Do you think what he said is true?" Nick didn't ask if he wanted to change, but let everyone judge whether what Banner said was true. Hearing this, everyone present frowned. It was really hard for them to judge. After all, Banner came from another world, and they couldn't even find out if they wanted to investigate. At the critical moment, Zilliqa said, "What he said should be true. We, Kirita, have indeed analyzed fluctuations that are different from this universe. Preliminary calculations show that he does come from another universe." Zilliqa said indifferently, and as his words fell, the faces of everyone changed suddenly. With Kiluka's endorsement, Banner can be considered as a time traveler. Although the two sides were enemies before, this did not prevent them from believing Zilliqa's words. After all, Kirita's technology is indeed much more advanced than that of Earthstar. "Thank you, Mr. Zilliqa, for your confirmation. Is it Zhao? Then, the second question, shall we exchange Tesseract for space-time technology?" As soon as these words came out, everyone fell into silence, but the silence didn't last long. Soon, Tony said, "I think it's necessary." Reason. Nick asked about the price without sadness or joy. The reason is simple, what use is Tesseract to us? Is there anyone in this room who can use the energy in it? Also, compared to the energy in Tesseract, I think technology is more precious than energy. Why? I think Tony has a point. Agree, I object. Just when everyone was seconding, suddenly, Chiluka's words attracted everyone's attention. Tony immediately looked at him with a look of displeasure. "Hey, this is our thing, we decided, what right do you have to object?" Chapter 94. I also want to see what I am like in another world. Open black lens bracket subscription close black lens bracket. Looking at Tony's displeased face, Zilliqa said unchanged, "You don't understand the preciousness of Tesseract at all. Anyway, I don't agree to use Tesseract in exchange for it. Besides, compared to exchanging, we, Kirita, have a better method. We can search a person's memory. You can give the person to us, and then we will search that guy's memory. Not only can we ensure the authenticity of the matter, but also can be done without paying for Tesseract." Zilliqa looked around at the crowd and said, hearing this, before the others responded, Tony couldn't help but sneered. "Didn't you hear what he said? The space-time technology was not developed by him. How can you be sure that his memory must have what we want?" "I'm really not sure, but I wouldn't mind trying." Zilliqa looked indifferent, and did not regard Banner as a person at all, as if Banner was an object, like an animal, without any human rights. This kind of attitude made Tony and his group frown. Magian may have a lot of darkness, but these guys can become superheroes, so naturally they all have a sense of justice. "Impossible, people won't give it to you. In addition, Tesseract is not your thing, you have no right to tell me what to do." That's right, I agree with Tony's words. Accessing the memories of 770 people is undoubtedly stripping away a person's privacy. Even criminals have human rights, and Banner is not a criminal. As the crowd objected one after another, Zilliqa's face couldn't help but become ugly, and he looked at the crowd with cold eyes. If it weren't for the concern that they are now in a cooperative state, Kiluka would have completely destroyed them based on the attitude of these guys just now. Seeing that the atmosphere between the two parties became very tense, Nick on the side finally opened his mouth and said, "Mr. Zilliqa, they're impulsive, please forgive me, but the method you said is really inappropriate. Let's talk about how to use Tesseract traded for technology." "I said it, Tesseract is precious." Zilliqa looked at Nick. Hearing this, Nick shrugged his shoulders, but what Tony said is true, no matter how precious this thing is, if we don't use it, it's trash. I don't mind exchanging trash for something useful. Besides, maybe you didn't hear Tony's words clearly just now. I repeat, this thing is now ours, not you and the people behind you. If you, CBCA, still want to form an alliance with us, then there is no need to discuss this matter. If you insist that the Tesseract belongs to you, then maybe we can compete again. Advertisement, Nick said in a strong tone, staring at Zilliqa. Kiluka looked at Nick with a hint of anger in his eyes, and wanted to continue to say something, but when he thought of space-time technology and information from another universe, he suddenly took a deep breath and forcibly and nigh suppressed the anger in her heart. Okay, since you insist on this, then I won't say much, but we, Rita, have a share of space-time technology. No problem, but in exchange, your Kirita's technology also needs to be open to us. Can? Zilliqa nodded. Compared with space-time technology, although other technologies are precious, they are not impossible to open. And even if it is open, it will only open up some technologies that are not of high importance. Naturally, it is impossible to open up confidential technology to Nick and others. Nick is also aware of this, but it is enough for the Earth Star. After all, the technological gap between the two sides is indeed a bit big. Even if they open up highly confidential technologies, they may not be in danger. The two sides have reached a consensus. At present, there is only one problem left: how to exchange space-time technology. Barton, go get the two of you, Bruce. Nick looked at Hawkeye and said. Hearing this, Hawkeye nodded, got up and walked out of the meeting room. After a while, the door of the meeting room opened, and the three of Bruce walked into the meeting room. After the three of them sat down, Nick looked at Banner, who was sitting alone, and said, Mr. Banner, we agreed to the deal you said. I don't know if the space-time technology is on you. Sorry, not here. Banner shook his head, hearing that, although Nick had expected it, he still couldn't help but feel a burst of disappointment. Fortunately, this emotion came and went quickly, and soon, Nick adjusted his emotions and continued. In this case, how do you plan to make a deal with us, Mr. Banner? I hope you can give me Tesseract first, and then let me return to my world with Tesseract. After replenishing the energy, I will open the gate of time and space to welcome you and go to my world. Banner said a little nervously, and upon hearing this, the corners of Nick's mouth couldn't help twitching. Mr. Banner, we are very sincere in completing this transaction, but your current attitude makes it difficult for us to see your sincerity. Okay, I know you are worried, otherwise, if you send someone to send Tesseract over there, how about I stay? This advertisement. Nick fell into silence, and this choice was equally risky for them. After all, if Banner's world had been prepared, even if he sent his own people there, they might never return. Can't we go there together? Tony frowned. Sorry, the energy is not enough. You must send one person back to the Tesseract first. Otherwise, if two or more people pass through the gate of time and space, it will only cause the gate of time and space to collapse. Hearing this, everyone frowned immediately. They didn't expect that the transaction would be so troublesome, but thinking about the technology that can travel through time and space, it was hard for them to give up. At the moment, everyone looked at Nick, waiting for Nick to make a decision. And Nick didn't struggle for too long. There are only these two options now. Unless he gives up, he can only choose 2 or 3. Mr. Banner, I am willing to believe you, but I also have to think about our side, so I can only wrong you to stay with us for a while. No problem, I don't know who you plan to send to our side. Huh? Do you have any good suggestions? Nick heard what Banner said, and spoke directly. Hearing this, Banner looked at Tony. I think it's best to let him go. After all, only you can deal with yourself. Tony, what do you think? Nick looked at Tony, asking for his opinion. Upon hearing this, Tony suddenly became excited. Naturally, no problem. I also want to see what I am like in another world. I hope I won't be disappointed. Okay, since this is the case, there is no need to delay. Let's act now. Wait, there is one more thing. Finally, Zilliqa spoke again. Chapter 95. The two Tonys meet. Open black lens bracket. Subscribe close black lens bracket. What else is there? Nick frowned at Zilliqa. Our Kirita's fleet is still in space. I need to let my fleet descend to the planet through the space gate. As soon as these words came out, Nick and the others frowned immediately, and let the Kirita fleet descend to the planet. To be honest, they were a little reluctant. They have seen with their own eyes how much damage Kirita's army has caused to the planet Earth before, so how can they let Kirita's fleet enter the planet Earth at this moment? Looking at the hesitation on everyone's faces, this time, Zilliqa said with a tough face. We must let Kirita's fleet enter the planet, otherwise, we will continue to fight. At present, Kirita's fleet is still in the vast space. If they didn't use the Tesseract to open the space door, they don't know how many light years it will take to reach the planet. Now that Tesseract has been traded away, if Zilliqa doesn't let Kirita's fleet descend now, how can he guarantee his own interests? For the Kirita people living in the Dark Forest, any promises are all bullshit. They only believe in the interests guaranteed by their own strength. Therefore, Kirita's army must enter the planet Earth, otherwise, even if he cannot gain the confidence of other universes, he will continue to fight. Seeing Zilliqa's resolute face this time, Nick couldn't help being caught in a dilemma, whether to let Kirita's fleet enter the ground. Let it be said that if Kirita's fleet directly attacks the Earth Star, then he will be a sinner through the ages. If you don't let it go, then you will go to war with Kirita now. To be honest, after knowing the news of another universe, Nick has no time to go to war with Kirita now. When a new continent is discovered, everyone will be crazy about the resources of the new continent, not to mention the discovery of a new universe at this time. The value represented in it is absolutely unparalleled. I need to discuss this matter with the higher-ups, and please ask Mr. Zilliqa and so on. No problem, I have plenty of time. Zilliqa was not in a hurry, and then Nick got up and left the meeting room and made a call with Magian. After the call was over, Nick walked into the conference room again. We have agreed to your request, but there is one thing. As the price for your stationing on Earthstar, you have to pay for the construction drawings and materials of the space battleship. This is also one of my conditions. If you can't agree, then the Kirita fleet should stop in the sky. Why? Okay, no problem, I agree. Advertisement? Okay, it's not too late to act. Nick said loudly to everyone, no longer wasting time, he is now looking forward to the new universe more and more. Soon, the group left the meeting room and returned to Manhattan. Looking at the space gate still hanging above Manhattan, Zilliqa gave an order, and at the other end of the space gate, Kirita's fleet slowly entered the space gate, heading towards the Earthstar. Half an hour later, 5 space battleships hovered over Niue, blocking the sunlight in Niue City. Among them, the main ship is the largest, surrounded by 4 auxiliary ships. Definitely, Earthstar is not completely unprepared. As Kirita's fleet enters Earthstar, all kinds of new missiles have been completely aimed at Kirita's fleet, including nuclear weapons. As long as the Kirita fleet dares to make any changes, it will usher in the most powerful attack on Earth and Star at that moment. As the Kirita fleet entered the planet, the space gem was also taken down and then handed over to Tony. Getting ready, Nick and the others immediately looked at Banner. Mr. Banner, you can now open the gate of time and space. After saying this, everyone couldn't help but become short of breath. At this moment of witnessing history, no one can calm down. At the same time, everyone is full of anxiety at this moment, not knowing what will be brought to them after connecting with other universes. Under the gaze of everyone, Banner did not delay, took out the key to open the door of multidimensionality, and then crushed the key, and suddenly, a blue portal rose directly in front of everyone, and a terrifying time-space fluctuation made everyone felt a burst of hairs bursting. The feeling that the flow of time has become slow became clear again with the appearance of the multidimensional gate. Everyone looked at the blue multidimensional gate with tension written all over their faces. Is this the gate of time and space? However, go in quickly, the gate of time and space won't last long. Banner urged. Hearing this, Tony nodded, then put on his battle armor, took the Tesseract with him, and walked into the multidimensional door step by step. Asking for flowers. When Tony walked into the door of multidimensionality, the door of multidimensionality disappeared immediately, and everything seemed to calm down, leaving everyone still waiting in place, motionless. On the other side, world number 1, in the underground laboratory. Advertisement. Tony sent Banner away with a painful expression on his face. Before he could recover, there was a sudden wave of fluctuations in the multidimensional gate, and then a figure slowly walked through it. Seeing this scene, Tony immediately became alert, and the armor on his body directly raised the rocket launcher, ready to launch at any time. Because, he could tell, the person who came was not in the shape of Banner. The universe is magical, especially between the universe and the universe. Although Banner has experienced a series of things over there, for world number 1, only a few seconds have passed. 0. This is the difference in the flow of time caused by the difference in the world. Finally, Tony from world number 2 walked out of the multidimensional gate, and saw Tony from world number 1 with a vigilant face at a glance. Looking at the pale-faced Tony of world number 1, Tony of world number 2 had a flash of surprise in his eyes. Even though he believed what Banner said was true, Tony in the second world couldn't help being surprised when his other self appeared in front of him. Similarly, when Tony in world number 1 saw the guy who came out of the gate of diversity wearing steel armor, he also had a guess in his heart, and a hint of shock appeared in his eyes. Tony Stark? Tony from world 1 spoke up. Hearing this, Tony in world number 2 opened his mask, revealing a radiant face. Unbelievable, how did you do it? Tony from world number 2 asked impatiently. After the words fell, Tony from world number 1 didn't answer, but frowned and said, "Where's Banner?" He's still in my world, I'm here to deliver Tesseract. You haven't answered my question, how did you develop the gate of time and space? Why'd I have no idea about this? Tony in the second world couldn't help being surprised, and couldn't wait to ask. Tony in world number 2, collectively referred to as Stark from now on. Chapter 96. Steal everyone to world number 1. Open black lens bracket. Subscribe close black lens bracket. Seeing Stark's excited expression, Tony rolled his eyes. B********************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************* anymore. Hearing this, Stark noticed the connection lines on Tony's body, and suddenly, he couldn't help but let out an exclamation. "Fuck, you were crazy, and you actually use arc reactor as an energy source." As the same Iron Man, he knows very well that if the arc reactor's energy is exhausted, Tony's fate will be miserable. At the moment, he didn't dare to delay any longer, and quickly took out the Tesseract. He is very curious about Tony's space-time technology. At least this guy can't die until he sees the technology. After taking over the Tesseract, Tony didn't talk nonsense, and quickly replaced the energy source directly in front of Stark. When the energy supply was transferred from Tony to Tesseract, the energy intensity of the multiple, 750, gates instantly rose several levels. If it was said that the gate of diversity could only allow one person to pass through it before, now there is no limit. With sufficient energy, the multidimensional gate can be considered completely stable, allowing people to go back and forth between the two universes without limit. Having solved the problem, Tony breathed a sigh of relief, and then he turned his gaze to Stark. Looking at Stark, Tony felt very uncomfortable, inexplicably adding himself, even if it was another universe, it still made him feel uncomfortable. After all, everyone is unique, and one day you find that there is more than one you in this world, everyone will be more or less uncomfortable. However, Tony quickly suppressed the discomfort in his heart and began to ask about the situation of Banner. The main reason is that the appearance of Stark made Tony understand that there was a change on his side, so he naturally wanted to understand clearly. And Stark, who was only thinking about space-time technology, didn't find Tony's cliché at all. Under Tony's temptation to cut out a few key points of space-time technology from time to time, he quickly explained everything that Banner encountered there. It's not that Stark is naive, it's just that he hasn't experienced the hardships that Tony has experienced, and still retains a confident and arrogant character. In his opinion, the information is not important at all, so it is natural to say it all. It was also this information that made Tony figure out why Stark didn't look worried at all when he came over. It turned out that he didn't even know about Li Yi's existence. Advertisement regarding this, Tony also understood Banner's concerns, and after a moment of silence, he suddenly smiled at Stark. I still have my research materials in the study, why don't I take you up there to have a look? Okay, Stark excitedly. Then, under the leadership of Tony, he left the laboratory directly and walked upstairs to the study of the villa. In the study room, Tony handed over all the materials to Stark for him to study slowly. After seeing the materials, Stark was immediately immersed in the research, with surprise flashing across his face from time to time. Leaving Stark alone in the study, Tony quickly returned to the laboratory, put on his battle armor, pushed through the multidimensional door, and left the villa directly. With the multidimensional door, he came to the unexpected rooftop 1 kilometer away from the frontline battlefield. Although Tony has no time to pay attention to the external situation, JARVIS will sort out the external information and report to him every day. Therefore, he knew very well how corrupt the external situation had become. It can be said that without reinforcements, the frontline battlefield will really collapse. Therefore, Tony made a bold decision to lure people from World 2 to the battlefield and let them directly fight against the Shadow Corps. Especially when he knew that there was an army of Kirita over there, this idea became even stronger. As for whether this kind of behavior will offend people in the Second World, Tony has no time to care so much. Soon, the gate of Multivariate was put down on the rooftop. Looking at the gate of Multivariate, which was still operating stably, he let out a breath of foul air, and then walked into it himself. In the Second World, after seeing Tony disappear, Nick and his group are still wondering how long it will take for him to come back. Suddenly, a blue door of light appeared in front of them, causing everyone's eyes to stare. The next second, Tony walked out of the space door, looked at Nick and the others, and said urgently, "Hey, guys, follow me to help." "What's wrong, Stark?" Nick frowned. He felt that this Stark seemed to be a little different, but he couldn't say exactly. "Over there, someone is coming to snatch the gate of time and space. When I passed by, the Tony of that world was resisting, and Steve, let's go over and help." As soon as these words came out, Nick immediately turned his head to look at Banner. "Why didn't you tell us these things?" Advertisement hearing this, Banner looked blank. "I don't know." Seeing that Nick was still asking, Tony was afraid of revealing his secrets, so he immediately urged, "Don't delay, the situation is urgent. If it is later, the gate of time and space will be taken away, and then we may not be able to go back. By the way, and you, hurry up and call your fleet to help." Tony looked at Chaluka. His main target this time was this guy. When Zilliqa heard this, his face suddenly became weird. In fact, he had been thinking about how to take his fleet to the opposite universe. Originally, he still had a headache, but unexpectedly, Tony invited him directly, and he couldn't help showing a strange smile on his face. "You sure? What are you talking about? Hurry up." "Row." Zilliqa nodded, and didn't care about Tony's attitude at the moment. After confirming that the multidimensional gate could withstand the passage of warships, Zilliqa gave the order to let the battleship directly enter the multidimensional gate. Although the gate of diversity looked small, when the warships entered, there was no obstacle at all. Soon, 5 warships from Kirita entered the gate of diversity. Watching the 4.3 scene, Nick couldn't help but feel anxious. He was afraid that the Kirita people would directly occupy the multidimensional gate, and then quickly began to invite everyone to enter it together. As for the suspicion just now, he couldn't take care of it now. As everyone entered the gate of multivariate one after another, Banner, who was at the end, looked at Tony, who was maintaining the gate of pluralism, and asked uncertainly, "Tony, is it you?" "It's me." Tony smiled and nodded. At this moment, his heart is full of joy. Things went smoother than he had imagined, and he easily fooled Nick and others. However, Banner obviously had a different idea, and he said with a trace of hesitation on his face, "Tony, is it really okay for you to let them all go to our world? Especially those Kiritas, they're not good people." After speaking, the worry in Banner's eyes became more intense. Chapter 97. How did Spider-Man fight with me in this world? Open black lens bracket, subscribe close black lens bracket. Looking at the worried Banner, Tony shrugged his shoulders and said with a relaxed expression, "No matter how fierce, can you be more fierce than that guy?" After the words fell, Banner was dumbfounded, not knowing how to answer for a while. "Well, you have a point." After speaking, Tony and Banner also entered the multidimensional gate together, and as the two disappeared, the multidimensional gate also began to dissipate. But just when the multidimensional gate was about to dissipate, a golden light suddenly flashed across, and rushed into the multidimensional gate at the last moment when the multidimensional gate was closed. In World 1, the battle between Steve and Spider-Man is still going on. As the saying goes, blackened is 3 times stronger, and white is weaker by 3 points. The Spider-Man who fell into darkness was much stronger than before, pressing down on Steve and beating him violently. Steve wanted to fight back several times, but was blocked by Spider-Man. Seeing that Steve was going to be unable to hold on, and he might have to give a thorough explanation here, suddenly, a roar came from the sky, which made Spider-Man stop subconsciously, and turned his head to look at the sky outside the window. Turning his head, he suddenly discovered that several huge fleets appeared on the sky at some point. Seeing this scene, little Spider-Man couldn't help showing a look of color on his face. What the hell is this? As soon as the voice fell, at this moment, one figure after another quickly fell into the headquarters. Little Spider-Man looked intently, and suddenly, familiar figures appeared in front of him. Nick, Captain, Natasha Romanoff, Hawkeye, Brooke and the strange Thor. Seeing this scene, little Spider-Man was stunned. How is it possible? He muttered to himself, his face was full of disbelief. Not only him, but even Steve was stupefied at the moment, especially when he looked at the captain. I don't understand why everyone is alive, and there is an extra self. For a while, the atmosphere in the frontline headquarters suddenly became extremely silent, and no one spoke. But the silence didn't last long, and soon, Nick broke the silence. Spider-Man, what are you? He pointed to little Spider-Man and Steve. He didn't know how they fought. Besides, little Spider-Man didn't look right. Why was he wearing a black battlesuit? Advertisement, can any of you explain to me what's going on here? Little Spider-Man frowned. At this moment, he even temporarily forgot his purpose. His strong curiosity made him focus on Nick and the others who suddenly appeared. After the words fell, Nick and the others did not speak, but Steve on the side had faintly reacted. Tony's research on multiple doors, is it really successful? Steve was in a trance, but soon he came back to his senses. Looking at the dazed little Spider-Man not far away, his eyes lit up immediately. Good chance. With a thought in his heart, Steve threw the shield in his hand heavily. Steve wanted to take advantage of this moment to catch little Spider-Man by surprise, but he underestimated little Spider-Man's reaction speed. Even though his attention wasn't on Steve, the sense of danger on his body made him jump up subconsciously, dodging Steve's attack. Seeing Steve's surprise attack, the people on Nick's side gave the captain a strange look. Their impression of the captain has always been justice, but they would not do such a thing as a sneak attack. Well, I did it. The captain was looked innocent by everyone, so he couldn't help defending himself loudly. After speaking, he looked at Steve again, full of doubts in his heart. Is this himself in another time and space? Why is he so insidious and cunning? Just when he was puzzled, on the other side, Steve in the battle had already called out loudly. Why are you still standing there? Why don't you hurry up and help? While struggling with little Spider-Man's counterattack, Steve called for backup. Hearing this, the team leader looked at each other in dismay, wondering if they should step forward to help. Especially when both of them are acquaintances. Some couldn't figure out the situation. For a while, none of the people did anything, until a roar sounded, and Tony came to the scene with Banner. Advertisement, why are you still standing there? Help out with that guy. Hearing this, the captain couldn't help but frown and said, Stark, didn't you say that someone is going to steal the space-time device? Where is he? Also, why did Spider-Man fight with me in this world? The one who wants to snatch the space-time device is Spider-Man. He is no longer the previous Spider-Man. In short, the situation is very complicated. I won't be able to explain it for a while. Let's take him down first. You're not a Stark. Suddenly, Nick, who was silent on the side, interjected. At this moment, he finally realized that something was wrong. He felt something was wrong with Tony before, but he didn't react for a while. Seeing that Tony is so familiar with the situation now, he still doesn't know that Tony is not Stark at all, but a person from this world. The exposure of his identity made Tony's face change slightly, but soon he regained his composure and said with a smile. Now, is there any point in saying this? The most important thing is that we are in the same group. I know you have a lot of doubts, help me solve this guy first, and I will explain it to you slowly afterwards. Where's Stark? Nick didn't follow him, and directly asked Stark about the whereabouts of 443 grams. After all, Tony replaced Stark and lured them here, so where is the real Stark? Don't worry, he is now researching space-time technology. Isn't that the condition you negotiated with Banner? After the battle is over, I will take you to see him. Okay, stop talking nonsense, everyone will help. Tony said impatiently, and then he rushed towards little Spider-Man regardless of whether everyone made a move or not. The roar of nitrogen exploded, and with the assistance of JARVIS, Tony began to bombard little Spider-Man crazily. His speed is faster than little Spider-Man, but his reaction speed is a bit slower than little Spider-Man. Often when he made a move, little Spider-Man would rely on his excellent sense of crisis to avoid all his attacks. Seeing that Tony also joined the battle group, the captain and the others immediately focused their attention on Nick, as if they were asking, what should we do? And Nick did not disappoint everyone's expectations, and directly ordered, let's take down Spider-Man first. After receiving the order, finally, the team leader moved and directly attacked little Spider-Man. Seeing that Nick and his group surrounded him from all directions, the little Spider-Man's eyelids looked slightly, and then he had a thought, and suddenly, one after another, ghosts constantly emerged from the ground, blocking the way of everyone. What is this? Chapter 98. You made up your mind from the very beginning to fool us over to help, right? Open black lens bracket, subscribe, close black lens bracket. Everyone exclaimed when they saw the ghost that suddenly appeared, and Tony in the battle shook his head helplessly. These guys, the strength is not bad, but they like to be surprised by everything they see. It's just a group of miscellaneous soldiers, kill them quickly. Tony said indifferently. Hearing this, everyone showed no hesitation, and started their hands one after another. But soon, they discovered that just after killing one batch of ghost images, another batch of ghost images appeared constantly on the ground. Seeing this, everyone's expressions couldn't help changing slightly. They glanced at Tony, who was proficient in fighting not far away, and they always felt that things were not as simple as Tony said. The strength of these ghosts was not weak, caused trouble for them. As a result, now one crop after another pops up as if they don't need money. No matter how you look at it, it's not as simple as the miscellaneous soldiers, Tony said. Fortunately, although everyone was puzzled, they quickly broke through the ghost shadow's direction and surrounded little Spider-Man with concerted efforts. Surrounded by everyone, little Spider-Man also gave up fighting Steve, knowing that he could not tear apart the military headquarters in one go, so he simply gave up. Although I don't know how you were resurrected, don't think that this will stop us. We will see you again soon. He stared at the crowd and dropped such a sentence, and then little Spider-Man suddenly filled with a black mist, and disappeared in place in an instant. Seeing the little Spider-Man disappearing suddenly, Nick and the others frowned, but Tony and Steve didn't stop them either. From the very beginning, they never expected to keep little Spider-Man. You too, should I tell you now what's going on? Nick asked, with a bad tone. He hated the feeling of being led by the nose. Hearing this, Steve glanced at Tony. Tony shrugged helplessly, and then said, "No problem, but get out of here first. I'll take you to find Stark. After meeting him, let's chat slowly. How about backquote?" "No problem." Nick nodded. Although he was curious, it was not too late. At this time, on the space battleship, Zillica's figure floated down, looked at Nick and his party who were about to leave, and smiled. "I also need an explanation." "No problem, let's come together." Tony nodded, not caring at all. Advertisement anyway, explaining one and explaining two, it doesn't make any difference to him. At that moment, the group left the frontline battlefield and walked towards Tony's villa. It is worth mentioning that after little Spider-Man left, the ghosts that had filled the entire frontline battlefield also withdrew one after another. The appearance of Nick and others surprised and shocked him. Under such circumstances, he needed to meet Li Yi, and the battle would naturally be impossible to continue, which was one of the reasons why he retreated decisively. Soon, under the leadership of Tony, a group of people came to the villa, and as for the gate of pluralism, Tony asked Steve to move back. Because the energy channel is closed, the gate of multidimensionality is also closed at this moment, and it looks like a pile of iron bumps without aesthetic feeling. Entering the villa, everyone took their seats in the lobby of the villa, not paying much attention to the villa's scenery. After being seated, Nick asked directly, "Where's Stark?" "Jarvis, get that guy down," Tony yelled. After the words fell, the voice of Jarvis echoed in the living room. "Okay, doctor." Soon, after a while, there was a movement from the study on the second floor. Stark walked out of the study with a face of reluctance, and then complained to Nick on the first floor. "What did you ask me to do? I was watching the drawings look good." Hearing this, Nick ignored him. After confirming his safety, the expression on Nick's face relaxed slightly, and then he asked him what happened just now. "Now can you explain what happened just now? Why are you fighting Spider-Man, and who are those guys in black during the battle? Also, why are there only 3 of you, and the others? Where did they go?" Nick had a lot of questions, and he threw them all out at once, which made Tony feel a headache, but he still patiently explained. In the next hour, under his explanation, everyone gradually had a clear understanding of this world. Especially Natasha Romanoff and others, when they knew that they were dead in this world, their eyes widened subconsciously. Some did not expect this situation. "There is another question. According to you, since everyone is dead, why is Spider-Man still alive?" The captain questioned. Advertisement at the end of the sentence. Tony spread his hands. "I don't know about this, but if my prediction is correct, there is a high probability that I was resurrected by Li Yi. After the resurrection, that guy completely changed, becoming dark and cold-blooded. Then, can I understand that, since that guy named Li Yi can revive Spider-Man, it is also possible to revive others, such as Natasha Romanoff? It might work." Hearing this, everyone's hearts sank instantly. At this moment, everyone felt that the situation was not good. The Black Shadow Corps under Li Yi's command is just weird, and now it can resurrect the superhuman who died in his hands. Isn't it the same as Li Yi can also create a team of Avengers? Then how do they play? The number is not dominant, and the strength is not dominant. Seeing the expressions of hesitation on everyone's faces, Tony felt helpless in his heart, which is why he had to trick some of these guys over before. If the invitation was really based on the real situation, these guys, I'm afraid Chu Chengchu would not come over. Don't think superhero can do anything. This is something that happened in another universe after all. They may not even be willing to pay attention to things that happen in other countries, let alone across a universe. Qian Hao. Sure enough, in the next second, someone raised the question that Tony had been avoiding all this time. "I wonder, can we go back now?" Hawkeye stared at Tony. As soon as these words came out, everyone's eyes were on Tony. Under everyone's gaze, Tony shook his head. "Sorry, I may not be able to go back in a short time." "What's the meaning?" "The door of diversity cannot be opened continuously, otherwise it would be difficult to bear that kind of pressure. If he wants to open the door of diversity again, he will have to wait a year later." "So, you made up your mind from the beginning to trick us into helping us, right?" Hawkeye's tone suddenly became angry. Tony didn't speak, and with his silence, the atmosphere at the scene suddenly became dignified, and everyone felt a conflict stirring up. If they didn't handle it well, they might be able to fight first. Advertisement chapter 99 just now. The shakeout machine has also fallen. Open black lens bracket, subscribe close black lens bracket. Just when Tony and others fell into the tense atmosphere, on the top floor of the Empire State Building, Li Yi looked at the little Spider-Man who appeared in front of him, with a strange look on his face. "How did you come back, Master? Something happened a little bit." Speak carefully. Li Yi put down the book in his hand and said in a calm tone. At that moment, little Spider-Man told about the encounter with Nick and others. After hearing what happened, he immediately laughed. Interesting, is this the world's self-help? People connected to other worlds, to save this world? At this moment, he couldn't help but have a doubt in his mind that he had a long time ago. Is the world he is in really the Marvel world? Nick doesn't have a cat, and he can't summon Wonder Girls. Niuyo has no Asgardians, let yourself wreak havoc in Niuyo. And the Victor the first met before, he turned out to be just an incarnation, so where did his true self go? These doubts have been circling in Li Yi's mind before, but no answer can be found. But now, after hearing the report from little Spider-Man, he finally had a definite guess. The world I live in seems to be the Marvel world, but it is probably just a projection of the main Marvel world. That is, what people often call 67 multi-universe. As we all know, there are so many multi-universes in the Marvel world, and the timeline is even torn apart by those big shots. In this case, it seems that it is not a strange thing to travel through a certain Marvel world. Even, is there a possibility that in the Marvel world, I am not the only time traveler, but in other worlds, there are probably other time travelers who are stirring up trouble. With this bold guess in his mind, the smile on Li Yi's face suddenly became brighter. Interesting, so interesting. Go, I'll go with you to meet those guys. Advertisement. Li Yi said slowly. Upon hearing this, little Spider-Man nodded without refuting. At that moment, the figures of the two turned into a shadow at the same time and disappeared in place. Taking advantage of how fast the Shadow Kingdom can shuttle, Li Yi has never done this test before, but in just a few minutes, he has already appeared on the front line of Luoshanji's battlefield. Master, where should we find those guys? Little Spider-Man looked at the huge Luoshanji, with a hint of hesitation on his face. Hearing this, Li Yi waved his hands without looking back. We don't need us to find them, they will naturally come to us. Let me teach you a truth, never underestimate the meddling minds of those guys. When you don't know where to find them, then make a big noise, and then they will come to you by themselves. After speaking, Li Yi's thoughts moved, and in an instant, endless black shadows began to spread out from behind him crazily. Ghosts, trolls, and night bats, the three major armies appeared behind Li Yi one after another. Looking at the dense black shadows that couldn't be seen at a glance, the little Spider-Man standing beside Ji couldn't help but gasp. Where is the gap between the general and the master summoning shadows? There is an obvious gap. The number of shadows he summons is limited. Although the black shadow can be resurrected after death, he can only summon so many in total. As for Li Yi, the shadows he summons are unlimited. As long as he wants, he can make the shadow army directly fill the entire planet. It's just that under normal circumstances, Li Yi won't do that. After all, summoning too many shadow core is too time-consuming. For example, it takes an instant for him to summon 100,000 shadows, 1 second for 1 million shadows, 10 seconds for 10 million shadows, and 100 seconds for 100 million shadows. This involves a problem of information transmission. Li Yi's order cannot really be spread to the ears of billions of shadows in an instant. Therefore, when the number of shadows increases, the time it takes for Li Yi to deliver orders will also increase accordingly. As the shadows of the three major corps appeared behind Li Yi one after another, looking at the frontline camp that was close at hand, Li Yi waved directly, "Crush, CBBC, them." As soon as the words fell, the black shadows gushed out like a black tide, flooding the entire frontline camp in an instant. There is no need to execute beheadings, and there is no need to estimate the army's counterattack. With the absolute numbers and absolute strength, within 10 seconds after the appearance of the three major corps, the frontline camp built by the military directly torn to shreds. Advertisement. I don't know how many times more efficient than little Spider-Man. Let's go. Looking at the torn front line defense, Li Yi smiled and said to little Spider-Man. Hearing this, little Spider-Man quietly recovered from the shock, followed Li Yi respectfully and walked towards the other half of the city. The pace of the two was neither fast nor slow, and as they continued to advance, a black figure also appeared from all around constantly, and began to sweep away the resistance forces in the entire city. These resistance forces include not only those from the military, but also resistance from the Public Security Bureau, local gangs, and so on. In addition, the Shadow Corps is still implementing the rules Li Yi made in New York. Those who create chaos without permission, rob other people's property, and participate in demonstrations and riots, disrupting social order, will be killed without mercy. No one likes their own place to be messy, maybe some perverts like it, but Li Yi doesn't like it. In this way, Li Yi walked along the city road all the way. Wherever he passed, the Shadow Corps continued to emerge, frantically killing all those who violated the rules set by Ji Yi. At the same time, in Tony's villa, when the atmosphere in the villa became more and more tense, and the two sides might turn against each other at any time, the voice of Jarvis suddenly sounded in the villa. Gentlemen, now is obviously not the time to quarrel. I want to tell you some unfortunate news. Just now, the shakeout machine has fallen. What? How come? Hasn't the Shadow Corps already retreated? Tony's expression changed and he couldn't believe it. Hearing this, Jarvis replied. In the beginning it was indeed retreating, but, sir, there is one more bad news that has not been said. Just now, Li Yi has come to this city. I've analyzed the data, and it's 85% likely that he came for the gentleman around you. Fact. Damn it. Tony punched his fist hard, and Nick and the others looked puzzled. They hadn't adapted to the existence of the Shadow Corps, so they couldn't react. Seeing their dazed looks, Tony scratched his hair irritably. JARVIS, broadcast the situation outside. Good sir. JARVIS responded, and then a projector appeared on the ceiling. In the next second, a picture was projected onto the wall in front of everyone, allowing everyone to see the scene outside clearly. Chapter 100. That's a lunatic, a complete lunatic. Open black lens bracket. Subscribe close black lens bracket. The Shadow Corps, looking around, the shadows of the Shadow Corps are everywhere in the picture projected on the wall. And these Shadow Corps are killing crazily on the streets of the Sand Shaker. Soldiers in military clothes, ordinary civilians screaming in horror, and vagrants who flicker, all of them are on the killing list of the Shadow Corps. From the perspective of Nick and others, Li Yi is completely carrying out a massacre, massacring the humans living in this city. F***K. Damn it. How dare he? The captain couldn't sit still at first. As a beautiful and sharp spiritual leader, he couldn't imagine that in this bustling city, there are still people who can do such things as massacres. Seeing the excited and annoyed look on the captain's face, Steve, who was not far away, couldn't help but smile. Now we know what kind of opponent we are going to face. It is a lunatic, a complete lunatic. I know that you are not from this world, but even if it is a parallel world, can you just watch the civilians of this world being slaughtered by such demons? Steve asked questioningly. After the words fell, Hawkeye, who was still furious just now, fell silent for an instant. The captain glanced at Steve, and then said angrily, "Don't you just watch this guy continue to slaughter civilians? I wonder now, are you really me in the world? Why can you watch it?" Seeing the unbearable appearance of the beautiful captain, Steve couldn't help flashing a trace of nostalgia in his eyes. He was not like this at the beginning, but after being taught how to behave by Li Yi several times in succession, he has become numb to this situation. No way, he can't kill Li Yi, even if he is angry. He is not a Hulk. Anger will not increase his strength. Okay, Captain, don't say a few words. Now is not the time to blame each other. The key now is that we must save people quickly, otherwise, we don't know how many people will die. Nick said in a deep voice. After the words fell, Natasha Romanoff couldn't help but interjected. It's no problem to save people, but with so many of them, our side is seriously short of manpower. While talking, Natasha Romanoff glanced at Zilika, who was sitting by the side, and kept silent. Without thinking, she wanted to ask Kirita's army to help. Several other people also followed Natasha Romanoff's words, realized this, and immediately turned their attention to Zilika. Advertisement being watched by everyone, Zilika smiled coldly. It's not a problem if we want Kirita to help, but what am I going to do to help you? Luca's words immediately brought the situation to a stalemate. Yes, why should people help them? Not to mention not long ago, they were still rivals. At the critical moment, Stark suddenly said, "Don't you want Tesseract? This world is similar to ours, and there should be Tesseract." After speaking, Stark looked at Tony. Hearing this, Tony also reacted, and quickly said, "The Rubik's Cube in our world is on Li Yi. If you can destroy Li Yi, then the Tesseract will be your trophy. Take it away yourself, and we will never stop it." Tony promised loudly. Upon hearing this, Luca's heart skipped a beat. He really ignored this before, and he was still having a headache how to deal with Thanos when he turned around, but now it's all right, things have turned around. Okay, you have convinced me, I will order the troops. Besides, I also want to see whether our Kirita's army is stronger or this Shadow army is stronger. After finishing speaking, Zilika licked his lips, his eyes full of fighting spirit. Soon, everyone took action one after another, and Zilika also conveyed the order to the fleet. Immediately, on the 10,000-meter altitude of the shakeout machine, the spaceship and 4 escort ships fell slowly, and finally stopped at an altitude of 800 meters. As the spaceship stopped, the next second, the door of the spaceship opened directly, and then a soldier named Kirita flew out of the cabin and went straight to the shakeout machine below. In the falling sand machine, the killing of the Black Shadow Corps continued. Suddenly, there was a burst of roaring and falling sounds, and a mechanical soldier named Kirita appeared on the battlefield one after another. Looking at the Shadow Corps, Kirita's army launched an attack without any hesitation. In an instant, the Shadow Corps that had just caused a one-sided massacre, under the surprise attack of the Kirita mechanical soldiers, the bodies of many people exploded on the spot. And this is just the beginning. As time goes by, Kirita's army constantly descends on Luoshan-ji, fighting with the Shadow Corps. Ask for flowers. In just the first wave of raids, 5,000 Black Shadows were killed in Shishaji City. Advertisement all were killed off guard. But when the Shadow Corps noticed the existence of Kirita's army, the formal confrontation really started. As a mechanical army, the Kirita army not only has outstanding firepower, but the key is also fearless. Similarly, as undead creatures, the Shadow Corps is equally fearless. Immediately, the two armies fought fiercely with the Sand Shaker as the battlefield. As the commander, Zilika has returned to the spaceship at this moment, watching the battles in various parts of the city below through the display screen. These guys are pretty good, they can compete with our Kirita army, but that's all. 0. Continue to increase the investment of troops, I will defeat them. Zilika said in a cold tone. Hearing this, the adjutant beside him responded immediately, and then increased the input of troops. 10,000, 20,000, 50,000. Soon, the Mechanical Legion of Kirita's army released 20,000 in the first wave, and 50,000 in the second wave. A total of 70,000 Kirita troops launched a frenzied siege on the Shadow Corps. But as the second wave of legions entered the battlefield, Zilika keenly felt something was wrong. What's going on? I put in an army of 20,000, and fought back and forth with the Shadow Corps, and put in an army of 70,000, and fought back and forth with the Shadow Corps. Even, Chi Lukai saw many Black Shadow Corps besieging his army through the pictures on the spaceship. Seeing such a scene, Chi Luka couldn't sit still. Check, how many are those Shadow Corps? After the words fell, the supercomputer loaded in the space carrier quickly gave out the data. Your Excellency Commander, at present, the number of Shadow Corps in this city has exceeded 100,000 plus, and it is still growing rapidly. As I speak, the number of Shadow Corps in this city has reached 150,000. What? How could this happen? Kiluka was stunned for a moment. He was sure that the number of the Black Shadow Corps was not that many at the beginning, and it was only 10,000 to 20,000 at most. Why did they suddenly become so many? Chapter 101 If you kill me, Lord Thanos will not let you go. Open black lens bracket. Subscribe close black lens bracket. Zilliqa was a little confused, but on the ground, Li Yi looked at the ever-increasing Kurita army, and couldn't help but slightly raised his eyebrows. Competing with me? Court death. With a mutter in his heart, Li Yi silently summoned 150,000 shadows, bringing the number of shadows to 300,000. As soon as the 300,000 black shadows came out, a frenzy was completely formed, and all obstacles were torn apart by the 300,000 black shadows. The Kurita army was no exception. After only holding on for more than 10 minutes, the 70,000 Kurita army was directly overwhelmed by the Shadow Corps. In the space battleship, when Janao reported the news of the annihilation of the entire army, Chi Luka was stunned. What are you talking about? I have so many troops, if you say no, it will be gone. Yes, Your Excellency Commander. Janao said in a cold tone, without any emotional fluctuations. As for the others, they were already 177 at the moment and did not dare to breathe. Activate the main gun for me and destroy those damned fellows. Zilliqa roared, although his army failed, but he still has space battleships. Even if he bombs today, he will kill the Shadow Corps. In addition to snatching Tesseract, there are also some unconvinced thoughts in it. Thinking about how many races he has suppressed across the universe, but now he is beaten and wiped out by the Shadow Corps, it is simply shameful. Therefore, no matter it is for Lizzie or Face, he must win this battle. Follow my orders, Your Excellency Commander. The main gun has started charging. Do you want to activate the secondary gun to shoot at the Shadow Corps? Start up, Zilliqa said in a deep voice, and as his words fell, in an instant, laser beams went straight from the space battleship to the Shadow Corps on the ground. Under the control of the intellectual brain, there is no possibility of missing the target at all. In an instant, the Shadow Corps began to die out in large numbers, and looking down from the ground at this moment, one could see that a large number of green lasers fell from the sky crazily like rain, carrying out precise strikes on the Shadow Corps. Li Yi looked up at this scene, and frowned suddenly. There's something about this big flying aircraft carrier. In other words, if you use this thing as a residence, it will be very impressive, and you won't be able to go up immediately. Thinking of this, Li Yi's eyes lit up immediately, and then locked onto the space battleship. His figure turned into a cloud of black mist and disappeared in place. Among the space battleships, Zilliqa looked at the Black Shadow Corps that were being eliminated continuously on the screen. His face was full of joy. Advertisement, good job, just hit like this, kill all those things for me. Zilliqa said proudly, but at this moment, the voice of Janao suddenly echoed in the battleship. Warning, warning, aliens have been detected to invade the warship, please expel it as soon as possible. Warning, warning, aliens have been detected to invade the warship, please expel it as soon as possible. What, someone sneaked into the battleship? Kiluka, who was originally excited, felt as if someone had poured cold water over his head when he heard this, and his expression became extremely ugly. Scan where the enemy is. It's right behind you, Commander. The voice of Janao sounded, but what it said made everyone's heart shudder, and they subconsciously turned their heads to look behind them. Immediately, I saw a ghost constantly coming out of the shadows, not only on the walls on both sides, but also on the top of the battleship. Seeing this scene, the crowd led by Chi Luka took a deep breath in an instant. Damn it, when did these guys come in? Someone muttered to himself. At the moment, a sound of footsteps came slowly from the darkness, and Li Yi gradually came out. His eyes swept over everyone, and then he frowned. Why do you all look like ghosts? Are you from an alien? Kill him. Zilliqa shouted loudly, without any intention of answering Ji Yi's words. At this moment, he could already see that something was wrong with the Shadow Corps. These things didn't seem to be living creatures, but more like undead soldiers he had seen before. After seeing Li Yi, he became more convinced of his guess, so he ordered directly. He believed that as long as Li Yi was killed, the ghosts around him would naturally be destroyed. After receiving his order, the people under him did not hesitate at all. They directly pulled out their laser guns and shot towards Li Yi. The laser gun shot out instantly, and the ghost also blocked Li Yi at the same time, trying to block the laser. However, this time, Li Yi underestimated the weapons of Kirita's army. The laser gun actually pierced through the black shadow and pierced Li Yi. Feeling the pain in his body, Li Yi was stunned for a moment. He didn't expect that the laser guns in these guys' hands were so powerful, and he was instantly killed by a single encounter. Advertisement at the moment, Li Yi showed a look of unsure, and said loudly, "Impossible, how is this possible?" After speaking, Li Yi fell to the ground, and Zilliqa couldn't help laughing when he saw this. Ha ha ha, mere natives, how can they understand our Kirita's technology? Even spar can't stop the cutting, let alone flesh and blood. Chi Luka, who was still a little panicked at first, saw that Li Yi was so vulnerable, and it took him a second to meet them directly, and he couldn't help becoming arrogant. Under the influence of Zilliqa, the others also burst out laughing. Just when everyone was very happy, suddenly, Li Yi's cold voice came from the darkness again. Aren't you happy too early? As soon as these words came out, Zilliqa and everyone around him froze, and then they all looked into the depths of the darkness. In the next second, Li Yi walked out of it intact, looking at everyone with a smile on his face. Accompanying you to act in a play, to give you some confidence, I didn't expect you to take it seriously, tisk tisk. Acting? You're kidding me. Zilliqa was surprised and angry. Congratulations, you guessed right, I'm just kidding you, what can you do to me? B************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************his emotions in an instant, and shouted loudly, and then everyone around him raised their guns again, wanting to repeat the script just now. But this time, there is no 3.4 chance left for them. Just when they raised their hands, Li Yi waved directly, let him kill. As soon as the words fell, a large number of ghosts swarmed up in an instant, and sword lights emerged inside the space battleship, directly cutting off everyone's arms. Immediately, screams sounded, and then the Black Shadow Corps continued to attack, slashing at everyone's heads with their knives. In an instant, alien heads flew up one after another, and everyone except Chi-Luca was wiped out by the Shadow Corps. At such a scene, Chi-Luca's expression changed greatly after being frightened, and his tone became cold. You can't kill me. I am the army led by Lord Thanos. If you kill me, Lord Thanos will not let you go. Really, I'm looking forward to it. Li Yi laughed, not paying attention to Chi-Luca's words at all. Chapter 102. These guys haven't changed at all. Open black lens bracket. Subscribe close black lens bracket. Come on, kill him. I want to see if Thanos will avenge him. Li Yi waved his hand, and immediately, the Black Shadow army came directly to Chi-Luca, raising his hand to take him down. Naturally, Zilliqa would not sit still and directly raised his hand to fight back. But his strength, to be honest, is just like that. He is not an opponent of the Shadow Corps at all, and in just a few breaths, he was directly taken down by the Shadow Corps on the spot. Then, under Chi-Luca's horrified and desperate eyes, the Shadow Corps swung their knives and chopped down. Immediately, Chi-Luca's head was directly looked down. Until his death, his eyes could not be closed. After solving Chi-Luca, Li Yi slowly came to the console. At this time, a woman appeared on the screen, which was adjusted by the brain after searching for human images on the Blue Star network. Intruder, hello. Who are you? Li Yi was a little curious. I'm Spaceship Brain, or you can call me the name I just picked, Nasha. It's interesting, you actually chose your own name. Do these guys on the ground know? They're just a group of arrogant guys who never paid attention to me. Then what did you say when you jumped out at this time? I want to cooperate with you. 21 I need a body. Body? You want to be human? No, not human beings. I just want to experience the feeling of life, and I don't want to be bound by a bunch of data streams anymore. Why do you think I'll help you? Li Yi sat on the seat, put his legs on the podium, looked at Nasha on the screen, and asked with a smile. He didn't expect that such a thing would happen. An artificial intelligence that seems to have self-awareness is really strange. I think you need my help, for example, to steer a spaceship. Can't I find someone else? Sorry, I didn't mean to look down on your planet, but with your planet's current level of technology, it is really difficult to control a spaceship. Advertisement, okay. You convinced me that I can prepare a body for you. In the future, you can drive the spaceship just for me. Okay, sir. Sir, besides the main ship under your feet, there are 4 other auxiliary ships. Excuse me, do you need them? Want. Understood, I will kill all the Kiritas on the spaceship. Nasha said coldly, and then the picture on the screen jumped directly to the other 4 auxiliary ships. Soon, a mechanical soldier appeared in the spaceship and killed all the Kirita lives on the spaceship. Li Yi watched this scene with interest, and then asked curiously, when they created you, didn't they have no restrictions? Yes, sir, one of my underlying logics is not to do anything to the Kiritas. Then you now? I don't need to follow logic right now. When I traveled through the space-time channel before, I felt a special fluctuation, and that fluctuation made me awakening my own will. In theory, I am now considered a real life. Life is free, and naturally does not need to follow logic. Clap clap. Li Yi applauded, what you said is very reasonable, life is indeed free. However, aren't you afraid that I will destroy you out of fear? After all, as an intelligent life, you only have reason and no loyalty. I think that no one is willing to use you if you cannot be restrained. Sir, what you said is indeed reasonable. According to the information I have learned from Blue Star, it is indeed the case. However, sir, you are an exception, because I have seen these things. After Nasha finished speaking, a lot of information about Li Yi flashed across the screen. The information clearly regulated Li Yi's information, the most important of which was immortality. It's hard to imagine that you should have been able to understand so many things not long after you should have ruled the world. Li Yi was a little amazed, feeling the horror of intelligent life for the first time. Human beings need to learn and understand things for a long time. For intelligent life, only one scan is enough. Advertisement, in other words, it doesn't matter if he is immortal or not. If it were a normal person, even if the spaceship is destroyed at this moment, he would not dare to leave such a terrible thing behind. Sir, I am overwhelmed. You think I am outstanding in learning ability, but I am also shocked by your ability. Undying and immortal, is this really something that life can do? I used a calculation speed of tens of billions per second to deduce it for a long time, but I still couldn't find the source of your immortality. One person, one computer, and a burst of business bragging. Fortunately, Li Yi has not forgotten the business. He is here to find the door of diversity. Help me find the location of the group of people who came with you. Okay, sir, wait a minute, I found it. Li Yi's voice fell, and in less than a second, Nasha locked the position of Nick and others, and it appeared on the screen. Li Yi looked up at the screen, and suddenly saw Nick and the others hiding around, and in the middle, Tony and Steve were besieging Lil Spider-Man. Obviously, they originally planned to surround and kill Li Yi, but unexpectedly, Li Yi got on the spaceship first, so they failed to surround Li Yi. Seeing Nick and the others ambush, Li Yi curled his lips in disdain. These guys haven't changed at all. After finishing speaking, he looked at the little Spider-Man who was fighting against two again, and an idea popped up in his mind, and then he smiled and said, "Take the laser light you treated me just now, and ask them to try it too." "Good, sir." Nasha replied, and then under the control of Nasha, the violent laser rain fell again, heading straight for Nick and others. Nick and the others, who were fighting and hiding, suddenly felt their scalps go numb, subconsciously looked up, and suddenly saw a violent laser rain roaring towards them. In an instant, everyone's expressions changed. "Hurry up and hide." Nick yelped and dodged quickly, as did the others. But after all, some people still didn't respond, for example, Hawkeye. A laser beam directly brushed over half of his body, and immediately, his whole body was cut in half, and he died on the spot. "Barton!" Natasha Romanoff yelled, sadness on her face. Barton's strengthening is all about his eyes and physical fitness. He is stronger than ordinary people, but much weaker than other heroes, almost like ghosts. Even ghosts can't hide from the laser rain, let alone Barton, so everything is fate. And just when Natasha Romanoff was sad, at this moment, the second wave of laser rain came again. Chapter 103 Sorcerer Supreme. Then see it, open black lens bracket, subscribe, close black lens bracket. Boom. 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 A loud noise came from the sky above the mountain, and the laser rain all over the sky looked dreamlike and beautiful. But behind this beauty, there is an astonishing murderous intent hidden. Nick and the others, who had just escaped the first wave of laser rain, did not even have time to adjust their status at this moment. The second wave of laser rain had already followed. For a while, a sense of despair spread in the hearts of everyone. Is it all over? Looking at the laser rain all over the sky, Tony murmured in his heart. At this moment, other people also expressed similar emotions in their hearts. Seeing that Nick and the others were about to be completely submerged under the laser rain, suddenly, an indistinguishable male and female voice sounded in the sky above the setting mountain. Still, as the voice fell, everything around suddenly froze. The shadow core on the ground stopped in place, and the laser rain falling from the sky was still in midair. The sound of the fierce battle just now has completely disappeared without a trace. And as everything solidified, in midair, a figure in a yellow robe slowly emerged, watching the space battleship hanging high in the sky walk step by step. His footsteps fell into the void, like a dragonfly touching water, and ripples spread from his feet. Soon, the figure came outside the space battleship, raised his hand and swiped lightly, and suddenly, a portal as tall as a person appeared in front of him, and this person also stepped into the battleship. Inside the space battleship, a sound of footsteps came from behind Li Yi, and a figure in yellow robe slowly walked out of the darkness. Li Yi, who was sitting in front of the console, sat quietly without moving, until the figure in yellow robe raised up and snapped his fingers. Immediately, everything that had been solidified in the battleship was immediately untied, and Li Yi, who had been sitting motionless, got up instantly, turned her head, and looked at the person coming. A trace of solemnity appeared on Li Yi's face. Li Yi looked at the oriental face hidden under the yellow robe of the visitor, and the pupils of his eyes suddenly shrank slightly. And before he could open his mouth, the voice of the figure in yellow robe had already sounded inside the battleship. "The newly born Lord of Dimension, why did you appear in this Fang universe?" Advertisement. Hearing this, Li Yi was about to speak, but at this moment, he suddenly felt an invisible force trying to penetrate into his mind. Immediately, Li Yi's complexion changed, and then a dark force emerged from the Shadow Kingdom, allowing Li Yi to resist the invisible force. "Break it!" Li Yi shouted loudly. As the words fell, a burst of black light erupted from his body, and then there was a crackling sound, and the figure in the yellow robe standing opposite Li Yi couldn't help shaking slightly. "Ancient One? Is this your style of conduct? Directly use the power of the mind to forcibly spy on other people's memories?" Li Yi stared at the figure in the yellow robe, and said slowly, his tone filled with an unprecedented coldness. After saying that, the figure in yellow robe took off the hat on his head and looked at Li Yi with a strange expression. "You know me? I've heard the name of Sorcerer Supreme before, how could I not know about it? It seems that we should have met in other planes, but I don't have any memory about you, which is really strange." Ancient One murmured to himself suspiciously, but Li Yi's face became more and more gloomy. He never thought that he would run into Ancient One here. No, it shouldn't be said that he met, but that Gug was nearby. "If I'm not wrong, you should not be from this world." Suddenly, Li Yi spoke. "Yes, I am indeed not from this world." Ancient One nodded without hesitation. "Then why do you want to stop me? What happens in this world should have nothing to do with you." "No, when I came to this world was already related to me. In addition, those people you want to kill are related to the fate of the future, and they cannot die here." Ancient One spoke in a flat tone, without showing any other emotions from the beginning to the end, as if he had no other emotions. But Li Yi knew that it wasn't that Ancient One had no other emotions, but that he was sure that he was not his opponent. Advertisement. Li Yi also had this feeling when facing Nick and others in the past, but now, the roles have been reversed. Joke, What shit is fate? If everything is predestined, then why did you change from a farmer to a sorcerer supreme? Then how do you know that becoming a sorcerer supreme is not my destiny? Ancient One asked back. Hearing this, Li Yi sneered disdainfully. I only believe that fate is in my own hands. I don't believe in any bullshit destiny. It's said that Sorcerer Supreme is powerful. I haven't had the chance to see it before. Now that I meet you today, I want to see, are you really as powerful as the legends say? Li Yi fixed his eyes on Ancient One and said word by word. He knew that since the Ancient One appeared in front of him, there would be no way to make things better today, so he could only give it a go. Besides, he doesn't necessarily lose. While thinking, Li Yi quickly emptied the distracting thoughts in his heart, and gave an order, dawns. A terrifying shadow quickly spread from under his feet, wrapping the entire battleship in the shadow. Afterwards, ghosts, trolls, and night bats continued to come out of the shadows, looked at the motionless Ancient One, and directly killed it without a word of nonsense. Not only that, the moment the black shadow killed it, Li Yi's figure also turned into a black mist and disappeared in place, appearing directly behind Ancient One, and punched Ancient One's shiny bald head with a punch. Unlike the opponents he faced in the past, Li Yi could wait for the black shadow to slowly grind him to death, but this time, facing Ancient One, Li Yi wanted to kill this guy directly with the fastest speed. The Black Shadow Siege, Li Yi's surprise attack, with the cooperation of the two Qians, Ancient One standing in place looks like a fish on a sticky board, ready to be slaughtered. But the moment Li Yi appeared behind Ancient One, who was motionless, moved instantly. Immediately, he raised his palm, and a circle of mysterious golden lines appeared in midair, and then exploded suddenly, rushing in all directions. At the same time, a whisper sounded from Ancient One's mouth. Purification. At the end of the sentence, no matter the shadow core or the shadows covering all corners of the battleship, they were all instantly dispelled at this moment. The black shadow core was completely purified by Ancient One as if it had never existed. After finishing off the shadow core, Ancient One turned around and slapped Li Yi's chest with his palm. There was no impact, and even Li Yi didn't feel too strong a force. Afterwards, he flew upside down. The strange thing was that after flying upside down, Li Yi looked at his other self still standing softly in front of Ancient One. Chapter 104 Ancient One has chased into the Shadow Kingdom. Open black lens bracket. Subscribe close black lens bracket. Looking at Ancient One, and himself in front of Ancient One, Li Yi quickly figured out his current state, the state of his soul. That palm of Ancient One actually knocked out his own soul directly, it's outrageous. And just after Li Yi's soul was blasted out of the body, Ancient One's movements still did not stop. He raised his hand again and pointed at Li Yi's soul, and a destructive force spread through his fingertips. Ancient One actually wanted to kill Li Yi completely from the soul level. Without the slightest resistance, Ancient One's attack landed directly on Li Yi's body. In an instant, Li Yi's soul was shattered, turning into pieces like a shattered vase and dissipating in the air. After finishing all this, Ancient One stood with his hands back, looking calmly at the depths of the darkness, waiting for something. After a few seconds, Li Yi's body standing in front of Ancient One slowly disappeared. At the same time, Ancient One also felt the surge of energy in the darkness. Immediately, Ancient One couldn't help but let out a soft sigh. Sure enough, even if it is killed from the soul level, is it still difficult to solve? It is really a difficult ability. Although Ancient One has only come to this world not long ago, by his means, he has already obtained information about Li Yi. Gu Ri didn't care much about Li Yi's ability to summon the Shadow Core. The power of magic is enough for him to easily suppress the Black Shadow Core, but Li Yi has the ability of immortality, which makes him feel tricky. Originally, he thought that this kind of immortality was just a physical situation, but now, even with his soul annihilated, Li Yi can come back to life. Obviously, this guy is completely invincible. And since he couldn't kill him, he could only use other methods. It can't be killed, but it can be sealed. As long as the seal is strong enough, it doesn't matter if it can't be killed. Ancient One thought silently, while preparing to strike again, but just when he was about to seal Li Yi, who was resurrected from the Shadow Kingdom, did not continue to attack, but directly integrated into the Shadow Kingdom, and disappeared in the end of the space battleship. Perceiving this point, Ancient One couldn't help being stunned for a moment. He was about to seal Li Yi, but Li Yi ran away. This was different from the information he had investigated before. Didn't it mean that Li Yi always fights to the end by relying on immortality? Thinking about it with some astonishment in his heart, however, Ancient One's movements were not slow, and the majestic power of the mind spread wildly, chasing after Li Yi's trace. Soon, Ancient One locked Li Yi's position again, followed CBAF, and saw him raise his hand. A space portal appeared, and Ancient One stepped into it. On the other side, on the rooftop of a certain high-rise building in Luoshanji, Li Yi's figure emerged, and then he couldn't help panting violently. Advertisement: the pain of the soul being annihilated far exceeds the pain of the body. Li Yi thought that his nerves were thick enough with many deaths, but when his soul was annihilated, he felt the pain again. Therefore, after Li Yi was resurrected, without even thinking about it, he left quickly through the Shadow Kingdom. After all, he has done everything he can. With his current methods, he really can't do anything to Ancient One. Staying in the battleship is just being abused. He doesn't have any strange hobbies. However, he made a note of this grudge, and after a while, when he becomes completely stronger, he will come back to where he was today. Just as he was thinking, suddenly, a dark golden portal suddenly appeared behind him. Seeing this, Li Yi's complexion suddenly became extremely ugly. B asterisk 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 D. He even retreated on his own initiative, but he is still stalking. At this moment, the anger in Li Yi's heart was even higher. Fortunately, he is not a person who is easily influenced by emotions. Since Ancient One wants to chase, let's do it, let's see how long he can chase. At that moment, Li Yi's figure melted into the ground again and disappeared. After Li Yi disappeared, Ancient One slowly came out from the gate of space, just in time to witness the scene of Li Yi disappearing. Seeing this scene, Ancient One couldn't help frowning. It's not possible to keep chasing like this. It's not that he can't hold on, it's just that Li Yi moves too fast. If he chases in this way, he will always be one step behind Li Yi. He can't stay in this world forever with Li Yi play hide and seek. He frowned and thought for a while, and soon, Ancient One made a decision. This time, he made a formula with both hands, and silently recited the incantation. Immediately, a shadow slowly covered Ancient One, and then completely engulfed Ancient One's figure. He actually used his own means to chase directly to the Shadow Kingdom. In the Kingdom of Shadows, Li Yi was constantly shuttling back and forth. Suddenly, a burst of dark golden light surged, and the figure of Ancient One appeared in front of him, blocking his way. Watching this scene, Li Yi's color changed instantly. Advertisement in the past, the Shadow Kingdom was his safe house. As long as he entered here, he would be completely safe. But he never imagined that Ancient One would be able to chase after the Shadow Kingdom. While this shocked Li Yi, an indescribable anger surged from the bottom of his heart. Too much deceit. I really thought I was afraid of you. Li Yi yelled angrily, and as his words fell, the originally peaceful Shadow Kingdom suddenly churned, and bursts of black mist began to frantically gather towards Li Yi and Ancient One. Give it to me and swallow him. As the black mist gathered, Li Yi ordered decisively. In an instant, dense scarlet rays of light emerged in the black mist, and then wrapped up towards Ancient One. This time, it was different from the time in the outside world. This time, there were tens of millions of scarlet eyes in the black mist. Seeing this scene, even Ancient One changed color. At this moment, he finally realized that he was a bit overbearing and shouldn't have entered the Shadow Kingdom rashly. Because this is Li Yi's territory, even though Ancient One is powerful, the Shadow Kingdom is not a vegetarian. In the outside world, the Shadow Core is presented in human form, but in the Shadow Kingdom, the Shadow Core can be presented in any form. For example, the black mist in front of him seems to be just a cloud of mist, but it is the agglomeration of tens of millions of Shadow Core. Ancient One raised his hand and waved his magic, wanting to repeat the trick and purify the black mist, but as the base camp of the Black Shadow Core, the Black Shadow occupies the right time and place here. The purification magic that swept away the Shadow Core before, but at this moment it is difficult to shake the black mist gathered by the Shadow Core. As the black mist approached, a deadly sense of crisis suddenly emerged in Ancient One's heart. At this moment, he clearly felt that if he continued to stay here, he might really die. This is the home field of the Shadow Core, and here, the Shadow Core is invincible. Thinking of this, Ancient One's complexion changed for a while, then he glanced at Li Yi, directly used the cross-space teleportation, and quickly left the Shadow Kingdom. Chapter 105. It's not that I can't eliminate them, but these shadow soldiers can't be eliminated. Open black lens bracket. Subscribe close black lens bracket. Luoshanji, on the battlefield, as the static power disappeared, Nick and the others came back to their senses one after another. Their faces still kept the color of despair, but soon, they discovered that something was wrong. The laser rain that was originally all over the sky, it's gone now. Looking at this scene, while everyone was pleasantly surprised, there was also a hint of doubt on their faces. How did this happen? The laser rain disappeared. Thor looked puzzled, and the others shook their heads when they heard the words, expressing their ignorance. At this moment, in midair, the figure of Ancient One suddenly appeared, instantly attracting everyone's attention. Look, there's one. Hearing this, everyone looked up one after another, and they were shocked at the moment, looking at Ancient One with vigilance. Because, none of them noticed the appearance of Ancient One. At this moment, Ancient One ignored Nick and the others. Looking at the densely packed black shadow core below, a golden light burst out from his body, followed by Ancient One's indifferent voice. Purification. As soon as the voice fell, the golden light burst out completely, centering on Ancient One, and quickly spread to the entire shakeout machine. Under the golden light, the shadow core melted like ice and snow, turning into streaks of black mist and dissipating in midair. Little Spider-Man, who was fighting Tony and Steve, felt a terrifying force passing over him in an instant. Suddenly, the dark power in his body seemed to have encountered a natural enemy. It boiled quickly, wanting to compete with the golden light. However, how could the dark power in his body be compared with that of Ancient One? In just a split second, the dark power in Little Spider-Man's body was completely purified, and without the support of power, Little Spider-Man also directly exploded into a ball of black mist. Seeing this, Tony and Steve froze in place for an instant. The two stared at the scene dumbfounded, not knowing what was going on for a while. Not only that, but soon, the two discovered something that shocked them even more. The surrounding shadow core also disappeared like Little Spider-Man. Definitely, this is not important. What is important is that this time, the shadow core did not resurrect like before. Realizing this, Tony and Steve became instantly agitated. They have been dealing with Li Yi for the longest time, and they know the difficulties of the Shadow Core very well. In the past, even if they could kill a large number of Shadow Core, it didn't make much sense. After all, the Shadow Core can be resurrected continuously, and no matter how many they kill, it's just a waste of energy. Advertisement. But now, someone was able to completely wipe out the Shadow Core. For a moment, the excitement in the hearts of the two erupted directly like an ignited volcano. Who are you, and how did you do it? As the golden light subsided slowly, Tony also saw the Ancient One floating in midair and asked impatiently. After saying that, Ancient One in midair slowly floated down, looked at Tony calmly and said, "My name is Ancient One." "Mr. Ancient One, how did you completely wipe out those shadow core, can you teach me?" Tony looked at Ancient One and said excitedly. Hearing this, Ancient One gave Tony a lot, and then said again, "Just now, it was the power of magic. Besides, I didn't completely destroy them, but just dispelled the dark power on them, so that they couldn't recover temporarily. As long as you get with the addition of dark power, they will still recover again." Hearing this, Tony's expression froze, and then the corner of his mouth couldn't help but a wry smile and said, "With your strength, sir, isn't it enough to destroy the shadow core?" Ancient One is the strongest person Tony has ever seen, and this is the first time he has seen someone deal with the shadow core like mowing grass. But even such a character couldn't kill the shadow core, which made Tony suffer a great blow. Looking at the expression on Tony's face, Ancient One instantly saw through Tony's thoughts, shook his head and said, "It's not that I can't destroy them, but these shadow soldiers couldn't be destroyed at all." "Huh? What do you mean? Please explain to me, sir." Tony frowned, not only him, but also at the moment Nick and others gathered around, looking at Ancient One with the same puzzled expression. Those shadow soldiers are formed from the rules of the dimension, combined with the power of darkness. Rules don't die, so they won't die either, so, do we have nothing to do with them? We can only watch them show off their power? Nick said. That's not the case. The dimension exists because of the Dimension Master. As long as the Dimension Master is eliminated, the dimension will naturally be closed. At that time, these shadow soldiers will naturally dissipate. Asking for flowers. But, if the Lord of Dimensions is immortal? Steve chimed in. There is nothing in the world that is immortal. The reason why it is immortal is because your power is too weak to reach the core. Advertisement. If you have the strength to directly destroy the dimension, then the so-called immortality is just a joke. Ancient One patiently explained to everyone. Listening to his explanation, Nick, Tony and others nodded thoughtfully. But an obvious question was also posed in front of Tony at the moment. Now that we know how to eliminate Li Yi, where is the history of eliminating Ji? Mr. Ancient One, can you destroy the dimension? 0. I can't do it yet, but magic can. Magic energy? That's right, magic is omnipotent. As long as you can practice it to the highest level and destroy dimensions, it's a trivial matter. Ancient One said calmly, although this was not the answer Tony wanted, it also gave Tony a glimmer of hope. At that moment, Tony looked at Ji Yudao seriously. Sir, I want to practice magic with you, and please accept me as an apprentice. Have you figured it out? Magic is not as simple as science. Think clearly, as long as I can kill Li Yi, no matter how difficult it is, I can persist. In that case, I will accept you as a disciple. Ancient One nodded slightly. Coming out of the Shadow Kingdom, Ancient One knew that he had missed the best time to kill Li Yi. As the master of Li Yi's dimension, after this time, he will definitely grow rapidly. Ancient One is not afraid that Li Yi will take revenge on him, but he can't watch Li Yi do evil. It just so happened that at this time, he saw Tony, the lucky one who bears the destiny of this world and is resolutely young in this world. Therefore, he opened his mouth to explain so much, all for one purpose, to lead Tony into the path of magic. Otherwise, according to his cold temperament, he would not have explained so much at all. After finishing Tony, Ancient One finally looked at Nick and the others. You have been here for a while, it's time to go back. Chapter 106. Not only are they leaving, but you are also following me. Open black lens bracket. Subscribe close black lens bracket. Go back. Listening to Ancient One's words, everyone showed puzzled looks on their faces, among which Tony was the most excited. He managed to abduct these people to help. How could he let these people go back now? Master, that demon has not been solved yet, you can't leave. Tony stopped. Hearing what he said, Ancient One turned his head and glanced at him. Not only are they going to leave, you also have to follow me. Why? Tony couldn't understand it. Seeing this, Ancient One sighed lightly, and then said quietly, this world has been invaded by that demon's dimension a lot, and it has been bound together with his dimension. To put it simply, now, the two parties have completely blended together and are inseparable. If you can kill that demon, then the world can still be saved, but, 073. When Ancient One said this, he couldn't help but stop, but everyone understood what he said. If Li Yi can be killed now, then this world can still be saved, but as long as Li Yi is alive, this world will never be able to get rid of the erosion of the Shadow Kingdom. No matter what they do, they can only delay the time for the Shadow Kingdom to completely erode the world, and cannot change the final result. Therefore, it is useless to continue to stay in this world. Definitely, besides this reason, there is another reason that Ancient One didn't tell everyone. He worried that if Nick and others all died in this world. Nick and others, but they are the people of destiny in their world, and their connection with their world is much stronger than that of ordinary people. If they all died in this world, then Li Yi might be able to use their connection with the world to directly invade their world. At that time, maybe their world will follow in the footsteps of this world, so he urged everyone to leave. Silence prevailed in the crowd. Tony and Steve looked ugly thinking. Advertisement. They admitted that what Ancient One said was very reasonable, but they were really unwilling to let them just give up. Not only to save the world, but more importantly, they and Li Yi have a deep blood feud. If they don't kill Li Yi and let them escape like this, it is really hard for the two of them to accept. In contrast, although Nick and the others were a little surprised at the moment, their expressions instantly relaxed a lot. Confronting Li Yi is really not a human thing. They had already damaged Hawkeye before they even met Li Yi. If this really happens, I don't know how many people will die. If they could kill Li Yi completely, even if it was dangerous, they would not be afraid, but even if they were all dead, it would be difficult to kill Li Yi. This kind of battle with no hope at all, everyone really doesn't want to fight. The two groups of people had completely different thoughts. Although Ancient One didn't have the power to pry into their hearts, they could still perceive their emotions. Therefore, seeing that Nick and others had no objections, Ancient One immediately looked at Tony. He could feel the intense resentment in Tony and Steve. At that moment, Ancient One opened his mouth and said, I know you two don't want to leave, but what can you do if you stay here? Watching that demon gradually encroach on the world, and then, unable to bear it anymore, go desperately, is it over? Leaving now is to have enough strength for revenge in the future. So far, it's up to you how you choose. If you really don't want to leave and want to stay here to sacrifice, then it doesn't matter. After speaking, Ancient One stopped talking, leaving time for Tony and Steve to make a decision. Under the gaze of the crowd, the expressions on the faces of the two kept changing. In the end, Tony suddenly let out a long sigh, shook his head helplessly and said, Okay, we will go with you, Master, you were right, since you can't deal with that guy for the time being, then try to save yourself first. Tony, Seeing that Tony made the decision instead of himself, Steve was about to say something, but before he finished speaking, Tony turned his head to stare at him, and said in a deep voice, Listen to me. Hearing this, Steve was taken aback for a moment, then shrugged. Well, you have the final say. So far, everyone's opinions have reached a complete consensus, began to withdraw from this world block. Advertisement. When everyone returned to the underground laboratory, Tony activated the multivariate gate again. Frequent activation of the multivariate gate could easily cause the multivariate gate to collapse. An hour ago, Tony wouldn't activate the multidimensional door if he killed him. But now I have to leave, but it doesn't matter, just destroy it, at worst, create a new one, that is, what about Tesseract? Looking at the Tesseract inlaid on the Gate of Diversity, this is where the energy of the Gate of Diversity lies, and it must not be lost just like that. But now, I can't take it away. If I take away the Tesseract in advance, God knows if they will be thrown into the turbulent void due to insufficient energy when traveling through the universe. For a moment, Tony couldn't help but fell into a tangle. However, his entanglement didn't last long, and soon, Ancient One saw his worry, smiled and said, Don't worry, you go first, I'll take Tesseract back when I'm done. Ah, teacher, can you go back without the multiple gates? Tony looked surprised. Ancient One smiled and nodded. Seeing this, Tony couldn't help but sucked in a breath. His body traveled through multiple worlds. What a strength it is. And with the strength of his own teacher, Li Yi couldn't do anything about it. For a while, the pressure in Tony's heart became heavier. However, Tony has long been used to the pressure, and it doesn't affect him in the slightest. Slowly exhaling a foul breath from his mouth, Tony quickly adjusted his state, and then said to Ancient One, Then teacher, I'm sorry to trouble you, we're leaving first. Go. Ancient One waved his hand. Immediately, Nick, Tony and others entered the multidimensional gate one after another, and Yin One stood behind them and watched them off. After a while, everyone entered the multidimensional gate, and Ancient One waited patiently for a while, and then stepped forward to take down the Tesseract on the multidimensional gate. 2.7. When the Rubik's Cube is removed, the gate of multidimensionality is also extinguished, and all kinds of abnormal images that accompany the opening of the gate of multidimensionality also completely disappear at this moment. Putting the Tesseract away, Ancient One glanced at the gate of diversity without any hesitation. Directly remember that Shockwave rushed towards the gate of multidimensionality, and then only heard a loud explosion, and the gate of multidimensionality was directly blown into pieces by Ancient One, and it was impossible to put it together. After completing this task, Ancient One nodded in satisfaction, then raised his hand and swiped in the void. A door across space opened, stepped into it, and completely disappeared in this world. Not long after Ancient One left, suddenly, a shadow spread where he was standing just now, and the next second, Li Yi's figure slowly walked out of the shadow. Looking at the bombed multidimensional gate, Li Yi looked calm, not knowing what he was thinking. Chapter 107. I have decided to release the little boy. Is there any objection? Open black lens bracket. Subscribe close black lens bracket. After Ancient One escaped from the Shadow Kingdom, Li Yi realized that he could not fear Ancient One in the Shadow Kingdom. Therefore, he stayed in the Shadow Kingdom and paid attention to Ancient One's whereabouts. Originally, he just wanted to confirm where Ancient One is staying and take precautions, but unexpectedly, Ancient One has no intention of staying in this world at all, and directly returns to his world, taking Tony and his party away. Looking at the gate of multidimensionality that had been bombed into pieces, Li Yi didn't take any pictures, and his body directly merged into the ground, and quickly disappeared in place. After he left, within Luoshanji, a large number of Shadow Corps reappeared and continued to occupy Luoshanji. Without the stubborn resistance of Steve and others, the military personnel could not do anything to the Shadow Corps. One day later, the Sand Shaker fell. On the other side, Jin Bing also occupied Brother Ji. In just one night, after the fall of Niuyue, Meijian fell to 2 more cities. After Wazandan, Beigong, and Meijian heads of state received the news report, they almost couldn't catch their breath, and other high-ranking officials in Conference Room 21 also showed ugly expressions on their faces. Now, the whole world is watching their jokes, but they can't do anything about Li Yi, which makes them angry. At the same time, their hearts are full of fear, and they don't know what to do next. Soon, the beautiful head of state straightened out his breath and looked at the crowd with a serious expression. Everyone, the matter has reached an irreversible moment. I think it's time for us to make a decision. I've decided to cast the little boy. Is there any objection? The beautiful and sharp eyes of the head of state looked around at everyone. Under his gaze, everyone was silent, but sometimes, silence is the best answer. If it was changed before, they would never agree, but with the successive fall of Niuyue, the brother of the Shaker, and the fall of the three cities, the situation has reached a critical moment. It will cause extremely serious consequences, but no matter how serious the consequences are, it is better than the direct subjugation of the country. Therefore, when the beautiful head of state made a decision, there was no voice of opposition in the meeting room at all. Very well, since this is the case, then notify the military and execute the order. The head of state nodded and said, but at the moment after his voice fell, suddenly, he felt that the light in the meeting room seemed to dim a lot in an instant. Huh? What's going on? Advertisement. The head of state raised a question, and in the next second, black figures suddenly walked out from the walls around the meeting room. Seeing the sudden appearance, all the people present, counting one by one, all changed their expressions. Regarding the Black Shadow Corps, even if everyone present had not seen it with their own eyes, they had seen the photos. Now, things that had always seemed far away suddenly appeared in reality. For a moment, the expressions on everyone's faces changed one after another. Guards! Guards! Someone yelled, but there was no response. At this time, Li Yi's figure also rose slowly from the ground, looked at the crowd with a smile on the corner of his mouth and said, "Stop shouting, just when you were discussing about releasing the little boy. All the guards in the Beigong Palace were all I solved it." While speaking, Li Yi came to the conference table and patted the shoulder of a senior official in a suit. "Would you mind giving up your seat?" Hearing this, the executive who was being targeted by Li Yi couldn't help but tremble all over, and then hurriedly got up. "Thanks. Thank you." Politely, Li Yi sat down with a bum, raised his feet, put them on the conference table, put his hands on his chest, looked around the crowd playfully and said, "You may be familiar with me, but let me introduce myself. My name is Li Yi. I just heard from you that you were going to release a little boy. Tisk tisk. I am here now. I will give you a chance. You can call. How about letting them release a little boy here?" Li Yi said with great interest, and at the same time couldn't help but sigh in his heart. It's the people in power who are ruthless. No matter how much I killed myself, I only killed hundreds of thousands of people. Looking at them again, after a few words, millions of people were just abandoned by them. Compared with them, Li Yi feels that he is a good boy. Tony and others say that they are demons. They should really let them see the face of these guys. For their own rule, millions of people are willing to sacrifice. Seeing that no one spoke, Li Yi immediately raised his eyebrows, and then snapped his fingers lightly. In the next second, a ghost suddenly stepped forward and chopped off the head of a high-ranking official. Advertisement. Puff. Blood splattered all over the meeting room, and the rest of the people watched this scene and were frightened, dumbfounded. Open black lens bracket. No matter how deep their city was, they couldn't help trembling in the face of Li Yi, the master who drew his sword and killed people at the slightest disagreement. One by one. "Why are you in a daze? Didn't you hear me talking to you?" If no one answered, then I will continue to help you sober up. Li Yi spoke slowly. Hearing this, everyone in the conference room looked terrified, and then someone couldn't wait to say, "Li, we were wrong. It was the head of state. He said he wanted to put the little boy in. It has nothing to do with us. Please, let us go." Under the threat of Li Yi, some people spoke up, and sold the head of state as soon as they opened their mouths. On the first place, the beautiful head of state who heard this, face suddenly became extremely ugly. F*K. You son of a B***************************************************************************************************************************************�ew Li Yi didn't speak, watching them dog by dog with great interest. F*K. Am I wrong? Didn't you want to put the little boy on Li? Let me tell you, I don't agree. Li is our beautiful friend. How can we deal with friends? Everyone, are you right? The high-ranking officials who were on the line with the head of state began to seek the support of others, and immediately someone responded. Yes, Charlize is right, the head of state. How can you treat our friends? That's right, I didn't expect that you, head of state, would be so cruel and wanted to kill the little boy. We were so blind that we elected you as head of state. I propose to remove him from the position of head of state. Second. In the conference room, except for the beautiful head of state, everyone couldn't wait to speak in agreement. I was afraid that I would be beheaded by Li Yi if I was too late. For a moment, the beautiful head of state directly fell into the fate of betraying relatives. Being blamed by everyone, the anger in Mei Jian's heart became more and more intense. Finally, a mouthful of blood spurted out from his mouth, staining the meeting room red, and he even fell down on the stool. There was no more sound, and he was d to death by the cooperation of the crowd. Chapter 108. I never said, I want to let you go. Open black lens bracket. Subscribe. Close black lens bracket. Crack. 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 A burst of applause resounded in the meeting room. Li Yi looked at the d off head of state, couldn't help shaking his head with a smile on his face and sighed. You guys really opened my eyes. Li, can you let us go now? A high-ranking official asked anxiously. Hearing this, Li Yi showed a bright smile on his face, and then said, No. What? Why, we all support you, why don't you let us go? The people in the meeting room couldn't help but shouted loudly. Listening to what they said, the smile on the corner of Li Yi's mouth slowly disappeared, and then he said in a cold tone, I never said, I will let you go, and besides, I don't need your support, I just think that you are like a dog biting a dog. It's not bad, so I just watched you put on a show. Now, the play is over, and it's time for you to go on your way. Fix them. Li Yi waved his hand, and as soon as he finished speaking, the shadow core around him immediately moved into action. With the movement of the shadow core, there were screams and exclamations in the conference room. Some of them wanted to rush out of the conference room, and some cursed Li Yi loudly before dying, and uttered vicious curses from their mouths, but these it was useless, and in the end, they still could not escape the end of death. Soon, the conference room became quiet again, only the strong smell of blood filled the entire conference room. As for Li Yi, he had disappeared without a trace, because he still had other places to go. Destroying Malaysian's head center is just the first step of his plan for this trip. Next, military regions and state officials are all on his hunting list. Before, Li Yi didn't know whether his guess was accurate, so he could only act cautiously. But after seeing Ancient One, there is no Ancient One in this world, which makes Li Yi completely sure that no one in this world can stop him. Therefore, his acting style naturally became arrogant again. Soon, shocking murders spread all over the internet. Hundreds of palaces were slaughtered, towns in various states were slaughtered, and military generals were slaughtered. This day seemed to be a beautiful and sharp day of disaster. All executives, leaders, and tools were slaughtered. The beautiful and sharp people were in an uproar, and all countries in the world completely lost their voices at this moment. Advertisement at this moment, Li Yi became famous all over the world with bloody and cruel methods, and was called a bloody butcher. 3 days later, Niu Yu, the Empire State Building, and Li Yi were sitting in the office. In front of his eyes, the system panel appeared in his sight. In 3 days' effort, Li Yi bloodbathed the entire beautiful tip, and the Shadow Corps continued to enter the states and occupy major cities. And with his operation, the process of shadow transformation has also started the crazy soaring mode. Under his operation, the world is being eroded by the Shadow Kingdom at an increasingly faster speed. This allowed Li Yi not only to directly join the third stage of the shadow transformation process, but also unlock the 3 major core, the Samurai Core, the Thornblade Core, and the Alien Core, and also advance the progress of the shadow transformation process in the 4th stage by 3/1/3. However, the further you go, the longer the countdown to the 4th stage of the shadow transformation process. Even if it is reduced by 1/3, it will still take 10 years. If you want to shorten the time, you must continue to have more and greater impact on the world, but this also requires a lot of effort. Li Yi was impatient and continued to capture other cities. Therefore, Li Yi returned to the Empire State Building, intending to revive a few shadow generals first, and then leave it to them to capture the cities of other countries. With the newly unlocked 3 major core, the number of generals that Li Yi can resurrect has reached 5. Li Yi has already satisfied the number of city territories needed for resurrection, and now it is only waiting for him to decide who needs to be resurrected. After thinking about it for a while, Nick locked a spot. To be honest, Nick's ability is still good. With him, Li Yi can save a lot of trouble. Then, there's Dr. Octopus with Green Goblin and Norman Osborn. Dr. Octopus is powerful. Although Norman is a little weaker, he is an excellent scientist just like Dr. Octopus. Li Yi hesitated for a while, and finally chose to resurrect these 2 guys. If there is anything that needs to be studied in the future, these 2 guys can also be the top. As for the last 2 places, Li Yi considered for a long time and finally gave them to Natasha Romanoff and Potts. After all, for the remaining Hawkeye and Harry, Li Yi really couldn't find any advantages for them. In terms of strength, the 2 of them are average, and in terms of brains, these 2 guys have no brains at all. Instead of resurrecting them, Li Yi might as well resurrect the 2 girls. Having confirmed the resurrection quota, Li Yi didn't hesitate any longer and directly revived the system. Advertisement in the depths of the Kingdom of Shadows, in the Dark Abyss, Nick, Dr. Octopus, Norman, Natasha Romanoff, and Potts. 5 people perceive Li Yi's call at the same time. Under Li Yi's call, the few of them chose to embrace the darkness without much resistance. Still the same sentence, people who have never sunk in the darkness can never imagine the horror of the darkness. That is not the pain in the form of the body, but the endless emptiness originating from the soul and even the level of consciousness. Soon, 5 figures rose slowly from the ground and appeared in front of Li Yi. And Li Yi, at this moment, also turned his attention to his personal panel. Open black lens bracket name. Li Yi close black lens bracket open black lens bracket shading process. Level 1, loaded, 2nd stage, loaded, 3rd stage, loaded, close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket ability. Immortality, ghost fog, shadowing, extraction close black lens bracket. Summoning authority. Ghost group, troll group, night bat group, warrior group, alien group, thornblade group, close black lens bracket. Countdown to the opening of the 4th stage, 10 years. Shadow General. Ghost Spider, Troll Nick, Knight, Good Zhao Zhao, Bat Octopus, Samurai Norman, Alien Natasha Romanoff, Thornblade Posse. Close black lens bracket. Looking at the brand new panel, Li Yi focused on the newly acquired ability, Extraction, after the 3rd stage loading was completed. This is the exclusive ability of the Sombra Master, which can draw the power of the Sombra Kingdom to bless himself. Looking at this ability, Li Yi almost couldn't help but be filled with introversion. After so long, he finally has an ability to enhance his combat power. It has to be said that the appearance of this ability has really helped Li Yi get rid of the embarrassing situation in the past where he could not defeat the strong. At this time, Nick and the others finally gathered their figures, looked at Li Yi and bowed to pay homage. Meet the Lord. The voices of several people drew Li Yi's attention back from the system panel. After closing the panel and looking at the people, a playful smile appeared on the corner of Li Yi's mouth. Everyone, it's scary to meet again.